Story 1. I have no one to comfort me, no one to care for me, no one to love me. I have been married for 15 years. I have known my wife since I was 8. We have 3 daughters together, 17, 14, and 11. I'm tired of feeling like I'm an outsider in my relationships with all of them. I'm just an ATM and taxi service to my kids. My wife hasn't kissed me in 6 months. She has not said that she loves me in 1.5 years. No matter how much I communicate, try to plan anything or do anything, it is always shot down, forgotten, or dismissed. I don't get angry and don't yell. I don't get physical. I like to splurge during birthdays and Mother's Day. I throw parties and give gifts and try to show how much I love them. I get a lukewarm thanks and, if I'm lucky, a side hug that lasts 0.1 seconds. This week was the breaking point. Father's Day. I wake up to an empty house. No note, nothing was written on the calendar, and nothing said beforehand. I send a text and I get back, I took the girls out for a spa day. Don't wait up. Then nothing, literally nothing. Dinner time comes around and they get home. How was your day? It was fine. I asked what they would like for dinner. Nothing. We already ate at one of my favorite restaurants. Cool, whatever. There is no mention of it being Father's Day. No, I love you. How are you? Nothing. Fast forward to Wednesday, which was my birthday. Nothing. Literally, again, nothing. I suggested plans, they get shot down. I suggested food. Nope. Shot down. Ask about watching a movie. They are all too busy. They just sat on their phones doing nothing. Now to Thursday night. I'm in bed. My wife is next to me. She rolls over and says in a crappy tone, "Oh, your birthday was the other day. I guess you expect to have sex." That broke something in me. Best of my memory of how it went down, I said, "No, I don't expect sex at this point. I don't expect anything anymore." Her, "What is that supposed to mean?" So I started asking her questions. "When was the last time we shared a kiss? Like a week ago?" "No, nope. It was in December. And it was during her parents' holiday party." "When was the last time we had sex?" "The beginning of the year." "Nope, wrong. It has been over a year." She was adamant that we did it in February. I was dealing with my mom's health and her passing, so I said something like, "You may have had sex, but it wasn't with me." "When was the last time you said you love me?" "I say it all the time." "Not to me. Check your messages." "You don't say it to me face to face." "Well, you should just know I do." "When was the last time we went on a date?" Long pause. Her, "You're being unfair." Emotions turned on fully. I was crying and raising my voice at this point. I asked her how she can't answer. I asked her how wanting any sign of love from anyone in the house is unfair. If expecting anything for my birthday or Father's Day was unfair. She got an, "Oh no, look. Yeah, you forgot that as well. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a taxi service. I'm not a punching bag." She asked why this was coming up out of the blue. Didn't. I have tried to talk to my family and, again, get dismissed or ignored. I brought up examples. I got, "And I didn't know you were serious. I didn't know it was such a big deal." I left saying something to the point of, "If you want to pretend that I'm invisible and don't exist, fine. You don't have to pretend anymore." I left the house at almost midnight on Thursday/Friday morning. Haven't been home since. I'm not sure what to do now. I'm finally sober enough to think, but I don't know what to do. First time drinking in over 15 years, by the way, and I'm not going to drink anymore. I love my family, but I can't keep this up. I don't know what more I can do. I think they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything. If I truly am the problem, then me not being there should fix it. I can't do it anymore. I have tried to be a good provider, a good partner, and a good dad. Never missed an event of our kids. Never prioritized work. I kept good hours so I could see them more. Took on more responsibility to better our life in the future. But it is never appreciated. It is never enough. I am never enough. I only have one message from my wife. "I'm sorry. Sorry for making you feel that way. We all love you. And we are here for you when you want to come home and talk. That is it. No other messages, no calls, nothing from the kids. I feel like if they really wanted me there, they would try reaching out more. All of the kids have their own phone. I don't know what she told them. I'm sure they heard me raise my voice. Me raising my voice would have definitely got their attention since I never do. I'm sure they heard me leave. I just don't know. Thanks everyone. I did not think anyone would care. You have given me some hope and advice I'm going to look into. I don't know how to respond to a lot of the comments. I know how to, just not in words. I'm going to try to figure things out more. I'm now 100% sober, so my mind is clearer. I'm going to start meeting with people on Monday and try to come up with options. Update 1. I have no one to comfort me, no one to care for me, no one to love me. July 31st, 2023. I have not been well, but I'm doing better. You guys have helped me a lot, and it means more than you know. I was able to get help through my work. They have resources for both therapy as well as legal counsel. But somehow my boss found out I was reaching out, and now won't leave me alone. But that's unimportant. I know she only has good intentions. So far, I like the new therapist I was able to get an appointment with. I thought there would be a long wait list. She recommended a family/spousal therapist as she focuses more on individuals. I talked to them as well. I got referred to divorce lawyers. I don't want to use them, but I had a talk with them and got an idea of what that route would be like. I'll be like 70% screwed, but we are in a fault state, so if it turns out she is cheating, I'll be okay-ish. My kids did reach out after a few days, worried. I told them I'm fine, do truly love them, and missed them, but needed space and time. For the first time ever, I missed some of their extracurricular activities. I think that is what made them understand something was really wrong. Some other family members/friends noticed and started asking questions to all involved. My kids also mentioned how things were not the same without me around and my wife was struggling. My wife reached out a few times, just checking in, apologizing, giving me updates on things. And a couple of the times she asked about the 4th of July. We usually host a party/barbecue. I said I wasn't interested, but I said that her and I needed to talk alone in person. That happened the weekend after the 4th. Apparently, she was planning the 4th as a surprise, a party for me after I had left to make up for forgetting my birthday, but I ruined it as I didn't go and wasn't interested. When we met up to talk, she wasn't alone and brought the kids. I was happy to see them, they seemed happy to see me as well. But I asked for my wife and I to talk alone. When I pointed this out, she said the kids missed me and it was fine, we can talk with them here. I believe it was more of a manipulative move. I explained that this was another example of how my feelings are once again ignored and cast aside, how I've been ignored for a while, and how that is not right by anyone. She kept apologizing. I said while I acknowledge the apologies, I don't accept them. Most of the apologies to me feel like they are not real, such as her initial apology of, I'm sorry you feel that way. Or they sound forced/ just said on what she thinks I want to hear. Actions speak louder than those empty words. I also said that she is setting an example in expectations on how I'm treated and how our daughters will see and treat me in their future relationships. As of now, no one should be treated this way. I think at this point my wife regretted bringing the kids. My 14-year-old took my 11-year-old for some snacks. My 17-year-old stayed. I flat out asked if there was anyone else, if she was cheating physically/emotionally or otherwise. She looked like I just slapped her. She said she would never do that. I asked why she was so adamant about us having sex in February when it has been longer. Why has every part of our romance died within a year span from her part? She didn't know. We talked for an additional 20 minutes. I finally took out 2 folders I had with me. One was a separation document, not quite a divorce but halfway to it. The other was therapist referrals for individuals and couples. I needed her to understand how serious this situation was. I asked her to look over each one and ask herself what she wanted, but she had to make the decision and schedule the appointment. I explained that I'm done living this way, and if she chooses to stay with me, then there are going to be major changes occurring, both in our relationship and at home. I love the woman I married, had kids with, and built a life together, but I don't know where she went. My kids came back and my 11-year-old was mad I wasn't going back with them that night. I gave my wife time, She contacted me the next day saying she has made appointments for herself and for her and I. She explained that she set up some bi-weekly individual therapy, and we have our first couples therapy early next month. The reason for the wait was so she could establish/work on herself first. I have been using the gray rock method towards her since the initial incident, per yours and my therapist's recommendations, so it's still a work in progress. I'm not in as dark of a place as I was when I first posted. Some things are better than it was. I'm willing to put in the work, but it won't be one-sided. There is a plan moving forward, so that's a plus. I have been home for a week now, but I'm sleeping in a different room. Some changes have been put in place already, but time will be the real test. As a side note, TW, on the second night of me being back, she actually tried to initiate sex, but I said no. That it wasn't the time or place for that. We had a lot to work out before that can happen. As always, peace, love, and chicken grease. Update 2, November 2nd, 2023. I'm alive and have an update. After the first post, I planned and almost committed to ending things that night. I think they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything. I can't do it anymore. I kept going over and over in my head. If I was gone, then their problems would be solved. They could move on with a new dad/husband who they would love more than me, who they would show more love than they have showed me. I was the cause of everything that went wrong in their life. My wife probably has a replacement that could just step in and be a real dad and husband to them. Something snapped me out of it. Still sounds weird, but it was as if I could see/hear my 11-year-old. She has been the one who has made me feel loved, wanted, and cared for throughout most of this, both before and after I left. From what I now understand, my wife was pushing for them to give me space, but my youngest wouldn't accept it. She kept pushing for them to reach out, track me down, and find me. She had a weird feeling. I initially hid the fact that I was to the point of ending things to my therapist. After my last update, I told her. She could tell I wasn't as open with her until that point. That changed the tone of our sessions. I have a better understanding and more tools I can use to recognize and help deal with those negative and dark emotions. With that came some diagnoses. To my wife, she did commit to her individual therapy. I started to see some changes in her. She has been treating me better. Things were going in more of a positive direction. I still shut down forward advances from her. I found out her therapist was also telling her to stop and earn my trust, and that we had to rebuild up to that. But that makes her feel unloved and unwanted. Ironic. I looked into it if she was cheating, and I found nothing. No text messages, emails, unexplained expenses, weird locations, absences, photos, apps. Nothing. Nothing. So she is either really good at covering her tracks or she didn't cheat. I expressed that if it ever came out she did cheat on me, it was over. The first couple of sessions were long ones. The first hour was individual with me, then my wife, then both of us. It was useful and helped, but not much. Same with the second session, which was 2 hours together. The third was a show. This was just after I opened up with my individual therapist about my self-harm thoughts. I just opened up to the men and told them everything. Where my head was at, my thoughts at the time, how close I came, what stopped me, how long I had thought about it, everything. My wife looked at me with a sense of horror. She looked at me and started yelling and kept repeating, "How could I, me/OP, be so selfish?" The therapist calmed her down, and I started talking again. I went deeper into how badly my wife and kids hurt me, that there is no way she didn't know about Father's Day or my birthday, how I still suspect that she has been cheating on me, how the dark thoughts started after my mother passed away and my wife stopped being my wife. I don't know what happened to my wife. The woman I loved disappeared. She has been gone for a while/checked out. My wife was loving, playful, honest, trustworthy, a fantastic partner, and the love of my life. I can't be with the stranger she became. I just went off and unloaded. The therapist said we needed a break to cool down and meet back in 5 minutes. I walked out. I knew it was being immature, childish, and an ass move. When I cooled down enough, I saw I had a bunch of missed calls and texts. My 17-year-old ended up picking me up since my car was at home. It was the first time she saw me actively cry. I think that got her to understand how much weight was crushing me, how much their actions have caused me pain. We ended up parked somewhere and just talked. We talked for a long while, more than we had in a long time. I got more out of that conversation than I have in the last few years. We got back home and my other two kids ran to me and hugged me. Not like the side hug, but an actual hug that felt so good. My wife approached me slowly and asked for a hug as well. I gave her half of one, and she started crying. We as a family hung out for a while, and when bedtime came around, my wife asked to talk. She did say that she thought she was losing me around when my mom passed, that I had checked out of our marriage, but didn't go into detail. She said she is still working through some things, and when she has a better understanding herself, she will bring to the table. She then broke down. She said that she really didn't know how bad it was. She is sorry but vowed to do anything she can to make it up to me and be a better partner. She is trying. I do see improvement. But why did it have to get to this point? But now I'm so numb that I keep asking myself if she really meant that or if they are just empty words. I don't know if that is the medication talking or how I'm thinking nowadays. Some days I feel like my mind is like when an old TV has the static because of bad signal. My kids overall are doing better. I still question the older ones sometimes, but I think it is me overthinking. School and activities are keeping them busy. But one thing that keeps bothering me is I can tell they are walking on eggshells around me. It bothers me. It's like I'm a jack in the box and they're waiting for me to pop out at them. Therapy is helping overall. It just takes time. My therapist said it is like I've been an actor playing a character for so long that I don't know how to be myself. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but I feel the truth in it. I need to find myself first and then work on other relationships. My wife and I did go on a date. She planned it and it was fun. I had a genuine smile, but in the back of my mind, I was wondering if this was for me or for the us. I am not sure what will happen in the future. Time will tell. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Caught my girlfriend getting close with my adopted brother when she invited him on our romantic lake trip. So, I finally snapped and confronted her about it. I'm 22M and my brother Felix, 18M, is adopted. My parents saved him from an abusive home when he was a kid, so they were always really protective over him and he was always the favorite. I'm not trying to sound like I'm whining. It's just the truth. This made me feel bitter toward him while growing up. Even though Felix is an adult who just started college, my parents still do on him. Up until he moved out, they made his meals and they still schedule his doctor appointments, which they didn't do for me at his age. I don't even think Felix knows how to do laundry. They bought him a new laptop for college while I had to save up for mine. They co-signed for his apartment while I had to live in the dorms with a random roommate who stole my shit. Just little things like that. I met Emma, 21F, at university and we've been together for about 3 years. She's so damn sweet, funny, beautiful, and we're super close. We've talked about moving in together when we graduate, and she's even mentioned wanting to marry me someday, though we're obviously too young now. I thought she was the one, honestly. We even have this stupid inside joke where when one of us says, "So, what are you thinking for dinner?" the other one has to say, "I was thinking maybe you," and then we both laugh. It's dumb, but it's our thing. Felix was accepted into the same university as me. And while he probably could have gone to a better one, he got into 3 Ivy Leagues with scholarships. Our parents forced him to go to mine as they thought it would be safer and make visits easier if we lived in the same city. They didn't even discuss it with me. They were like, "Isn't it great? You two can spend more time together." Even though we barely hung out at home. Anyways, I think my girlfriend Emma is interested in Felix, and it breaks my heart to think it. And this is probably my fault. When I was helping Felix choose his classes, because of course our parents asked me to, his major overlapped with Emma. So, I signed him up for a couple of hers. This is because I didn't know what the hell else to go off of. And B, if they're in the same class, I could see them afterwards and show Felix around campus or give him a ride to the grocery store, etc. and get to see my GF. I never even thought of what could go wrong. First day, I went to see them after their class. I introduced them to each other, and we went to get food at this sandwich place on campus. I realized that they were getting along really well. She laughed at his jokes, asked him about random facts from their studies, and then marveled at how smart he was after he knew the answer. Don't get me wrong, Emma was still far more all over me. So, at that time, I thought it was just her being her sweet self. She's nice to everyone. It's one of the things I love about her. But over time, their friendship became harder and harder for me to bear. Felix has this way of interacting with others that's very flirtatious, and he doesn't seem to notice. Like this one time we had a friend gathering at our house and Felix told one of the girls that she's so pretty that if he saw her picture being used to sell frames at the store, he'd buy the whole shelf or something like that. But he seemed surprised when she asked him to go out with her later on and told her no. He does this behavior with everyone, even other dudes, and now with Emma. It drives me crazy because no one else finds this behavior creepy the way I do. But I guarantee if an ugly guy acted like Felix, suddenly my parents wouldn't find it so cute. I hate how every time Felix meets someone new, they're immediately obsessed with him. It's been this way our whole lives. And it's just because he's got those dimples and that innocent puppy dog look that makes people want to protect him. Meanwhile, I'm just the boring, normal brother. Even at his welcoming dinner with my friends, everyone was fawning over how charming and funny he was while I just sat there like an idiot. The first thing that got to me was when we went to a restaurant because my parents were in town and Emma was invited. She noted how good her food was. Felix asked if he could try some, and she said yes. But instead of scooping some of it out of her plate like a normal person, he gently tugged on her sleeve, guided her spoon into his mouth, and thanked her. She just giggled. Am I crazy for finding that intimate? My girlfriend feeding my brother from her spoon. My parents just thought it was cute. That's when I started noticing little things. There was this other time when we were at a bar. They let Felix in because my friend works there even though he's not 21 and Emma asked him to take a photo of us. But after taking one of just us, he took one with just him and Emma without asking me. He had his arm around her waist. She posted the photo of them together on Instagram with a caption "Science Buddies" and a heart emoji. She didn't post the one of us. After that, I started noticing more things. If she updates her appearance, Felix will notice and compliment her. He joked that if biology doesn't work out for her, she could easily fall back on a modeling career. I've heard him say this kind of shit to countless girls, so I told Emma it means nothing. She seemed weirdly disappointed when I said that. He's also invited us to hang out with him in the past. And even if I can't go with them, he'll still ask her to go with just the two of them. Who the hell asks their brother's girlfriend to hang out alone? He texted her once asking if she wanted to get lunch because he was near her apartment. She said yes even though we had plans to watch a movie later. She ended up being late to our plans because their lunch ran long and she came back with a little gift he bought her. But still, she seemed so excited about it. Emma has never stopped him. At least at first she'd laugh it off dismissively. But over time it was clear she was enjoying the attention. She began talking about him a lot, like funny things he did in class, and asked a couple times what he was like when he was younger. When the winter quarter began, they joined some classes together. And for the first time, Emma didn't bother to ask me to join any of hers. I used to sit in on at least one of her classes a week, even though I'm an econ major, just to spend time with her, but she didn't even bring it up this time. They would hang out together after class without me. They had these inside jokes I didn't understand. One time, I heard her call him Lab Rat as a nickname, and he called her Microscope, and they both cracked up. I asked what it meant, and Emma just said, "Oh, it's just a stupid thing from class," and changed the subject. And when the three of us did hang out, she'd give him more and more attention, looking at him while smiling as if he's the best thing ever. I just wish she'd look at me like she used to. I remember before Felix showed up, Emma used to text me all the time. Like we were constantly in communication. Now sometimes hours go by before she responds, but when I'm with her and Felix texts, she answers right away. I've checked her phone. I know that's shitty, but I was getting paranoid and saw that they text almost daily. Nothing explicitly romantic, but they talk more than I realized. They send each other links to songs they think the other would like. She never does that with me anymore. One day, I overheard her and her friend in my apartment where her friend complained, "There are no men in our major with both brains and brawn. They're in STEM, so all the dudes in there are probably built like the Chicago bean." And Emma quietly replied, "That's not true. Just look at Felix." I have to admit, I cried on my floor that night, like literally sitting against the wall in my bedroom crying. Emma has told me I'm smart before, but never in that same admiring tone she used with Felix. And she certainly never commented on my body in that way to her friends that I know of. The absolute worst thing was when our friend group was at McDonald's. We were joking about this flyer we saw on campus asking for nude models that paid really well. Suddenly, Emma, in front of me, told Felix he should sign up for it. This turned into an uncomfortably drawn-out conversation between Emma and a few other friends about my brother's body and how he would be perfect for artists to sculpt. They worded it grossly, albeit in a joking manner, and how he needs this. He'd been job searching. They were saying things like, "You'd be perfect with your swimmer's build, and the class would love to draw your shoulders." Emma kept being insistent, saying, "Seriously, you'd make so much money," genuinely trying to convince him. Felix kept saying no and giving valid reasons why he didn't want to, but Emma kept being pushy, telling him to apply. She and the others didn't quit until Felix stopped responding. I just sat there like an idiot eating my fries while my girlfriend talked about how my brother would make a great nude model. I'm not confrontational at all, but in the car ride home, I passively said that whole conversation was kind of weird, and it was uncomfortable for me to hear about how badly my own girlfriend and her friends wanted my brother to get naked. Me and Emma are the unserious type, and I said this in a pretty joking way, but she seemed to take it seriously. She said, "What?" Like my accusation was the stupidest thing she's ever heard, and she said she was just trying to be like a good older sister to Felix and help him get a job. I told her that while I want him to get hired, too, it's not like I'd urge him to do OnlyFans or something. She told me I'm sexualizing a job that's innocent, which I can get. But I told her that regardless, Felix looked uncomfortable and probably felt sexualized since they were making comments about specific parts of his body. She got all defensive saying she didn't mean it that way. We went back and forth for a bit over this, never really raising our voices, but both being upset, and I ended up dropping her off at her own place instead of taking her back to my apartment. After that, things were weird for a couple days. She didn't text me as much. When she did text, she seemed distant, typing shorter messages than usual. I saw her on campus with Felix once, sitting on a bench talking, and I didn't approach them. I just watched from a distance for a minute, then left. I'll also say that since Felix moved here, I tried to become an extra good boyfriend for Emma. If Felix complimented her hair, I'd buy her an expensive hair product and compliment her even better. I've always spoiled her, but feeling competitive, I really upped my game. Last month, I spent like $200 on concert tickets because Felix mentioned liking the same band she did. I know that was a really backwards way of solving my insecurities rather than just talking to Felix or Emma, but I didn't want to admit that I'm jealous of Felix like I had to all the time when we were kids. I just want an area of my life that's mine, that gives me its undivided love and attention. And I thought that Emma was that for me. Now, whenever she mentions Felix or I think of them in class together, I feel physically ill. It's driving me insane. That's just to say that the day after the semi-argument, I felt insecure again and texted an apology to Emma. Then I proposed that we go and visit a nearby lake town that she'd been wanting to do for a whole year. She already had a plan of everything she wanted to do there. It's always just been me that was too busy with classes and my part-time job. So, she was super excited. She chose a weekend and we spent the prior week planning for it, deciding the activities and packing. And she booked us a hotel room. She had all these ideas. She seemed genuinely happy planning it all. For a moment, things felt normal again, like they were before Felix showed up. When she talked about getting that ice cream, she had this excited look in her eyes. And when I made a joke about getting a king bed at the hotel, she blushed like she used to when we first started dating. It was nice. But before we headed out on Friday, she asked me a question that destroyed me. She asked if we could bring Felix. No other friends. She didn't ask if we could make it a group thing. She asked for just Felix to come. I asked her why on earth we'd bring my little brother when it's supposed to be something romantic for the two of us. She explained that the three of us are always hanging out and she's told Felix about the lake and invited him to go sometime in the past, so it would be rude not to bring him. I just stood there in shock. Our romantic getaway that she'd been wanting to do for a year, and she wanted to bring Felix. I asked if she was joking and she wasn't. She said it would be fun with him there, too. She said he'd been feeling lonely lately and could use the trip. When I asked where he would sleep, she said, I mean, obviously we'd need to get a room with 2 beds then, as if I was being dense. So, not only was she inviting him, but she was literally suggesting we change our sleeping arrangements from sharing a bed to not, just to accommodate him. After bottling up everything for so long, I finally blew up at her with how upset the 2 of them made me, how I felt like a third wheel whenever it's the 3 of us. I mentioned the flirting and the conversation I overheard and even briefly mentioned how my parents did this exact thing to me. Admittedly, they have nothing to do with her, but still told her I'm so tired of being someone's second favorite. I told her it felt like she was more interested in spending time with Felix than with me. I brought up the time she was late to our plans because of lunch with him, the way she lights up when he texts, how she always laughs harder at his jokes than mine. I asked her flat out if she had feelings for him. I don't think I've ever been that direct or confrontational with anyone in my life. She responded by saying I was totally exaggerating as I'm acting like she cheated when she didn't do anything. I never accused her of cheating. She said all their interactions have been platonic, and she kept explaining her side of things to where I began to feel guilty for getting so emotional. She said I was being paranoid and that there was nothing going on between them. She said they were just friends and that she was trying to be nice to him because he's my brother and she knows how important family is. But I told her I was sorry and wouldn't go to the lake with her anymore, which pissed her off. She said the hotel and a couple places she booked times with would charge her a cancellation fee, but I didn't care. She started crying and saying I was overreacting. I just couldn't do it anymore. The thought of watching her smile at Felix all weekend while I pretended everything was fine was too much. I left her apartment and drove home without saying anything else. This happened about a week ago, and I haven't seen them since. Felix texted me asking to talk, just the 2 of us. I assume Emma told him about our fight, but I blocked him. My parents called asking why I wasn't talking to Felix, and I made up some excuse about being busy with schoolwork. They seemed suspicious, but didn't push it. The next day, Emma texted asking if we could talk, and I just didn't respond. She sent a few more messages over the next couple days, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I saw her across campus once and ducked into a building to avoid her. I know that's childish, but I just couldn't face her yet. Do I genuinely think Felix is interested in Emma? No. He's probably just sheltered as shit by my parents and doesn't know better. But do I think Emma likes him? Yes. But I still love her so damn much. I can't stop thinking about her. We've been together for 3 years, and up until Felix showed up, things were perfect. But what if I'm wrong? What if she just thinks he's a good friend? In their defense, I've never really told Felix to stop the flirting, nor really mentioned to Emma that her friendship with him bugs me. I'm also the one that put them in the same classes and introduced them. Maybe this is all my fault for being so insecure. But then why did she have to invite him on our romantic getaway? I just don't know what to do. Update 1. A lot of you were pretty harsh about my attitude toward Felix, which I guess I deserved, but some of you don't understand what it's like to grow up with someone who's constantly the center of attention. And to the people saying I'm making this whole thing up, I wish I was. But anyways, here's an update to what happened between my 22M girlfriend, 21F, and adopted brother, 18M. I tried keeping track of things as they happened, but sorry if this post is still long and confusing. A lot has happened since my last post, though most of it is just conversations and not like dramatic events or whatever. Clarifying points from comments. I blocked my brother as I was pissed at him for causing all this. I didn't tell him why, though. Just blocked his number. Juniors can have classes with freshmen at my school. There's pathways that you need to graduate, but you can do them at your own pace. Emma is actually doing a 5-year program, so she's taking some lower-level classes now that she didn't have time for before. My GF never told my brother to do OnlyFans. I brought it up as a comparison for the model thing. Some people in the comments thought she actually suggested that, which is not true. Why didn't I think Felix liked Emma? I hated how he acted with her, but it was tame compared to what he does with his guy friends from HS. He's just an extremely physical person, which I think comes from his past. My parents told me once that when they first got him, he wouldn't let anyone touch him at all. And now he's gone the complete opposite direction. Sorry for insulting y'all in STEM. I was just making a joke. I'm sure some of you are built like Greek gods. Update 2. After reading a lot of your comments, I realized that I needed to at least hear Felix out before jumping to conclusions. So, I unblocked him and texted him asking if he still wanted to talk. He responded right away saying yes, and we met up at a coffee shop off campus where we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. The reason why Felix texted me was apparently because Emma asked him about my upbringing, and something she said made him think I was mad at him. She had mentioned that I seemed upset lately and wondered if it had anything to do with how our parents treated us growing up. Felix said he thought I'd been avoiding him, which I had, but didn't know why. I asked him straight up if he was into Emma, and he said no and said he agreed to go to the lake because he thought I was the one wanting him to come. Apparently Emma had told him that we were planning this trip and wanted to know if he was free that weekend. He assumed she meant both of us wanted him there. I asked to see their texts, which I know is a violation of privacy, but I was desperate. He hesitated but agreed, which surprised me. We sat there for like 20 minutes while I scrolled through their conversation history. The texts weren't really explicit, but they still felt intimate. Emma gave him compliments, affirmations, and nicknames, and spoke to him lovingly in a way that made me feel special to her when she spoke to me. She asked Felix for help with schoolwork, constantly to fixate on how smart he is. He's genuinely brilliant, I'll give him that. Told him about her dreams for the future, and asked him for advice about one of her deepest struggles. Family issues she's only discussed with me before. There was nothing that alluded to cheating, but I somehow still felt betrayed. She sent him memes almost daily. She asked about his day all the time. She even sent him a selfie once asking if her new haircut looked good. He said it did. They talked about their classes, professors, assignments, but also deeper stuff like their childhoods and fears about the future. I saw a message where she said, "You understand me in a way most people don't," which made my stomach turn. I thought I was the one who understood her best. Felix's texts were mostly jokes, and the affectionate ones were pretty much just texts he sends to our mom, like, "Miss you" or "You're the best," with heart emojis. I trusted him at this point, so I tried to explain how they made me feel. He apologized profusely and said he'd stop talking to Emma. He told me he had his own crush and joked I should ask her out on a weekend trip to get back at him. Felix said he was just trying to be friends with my friends, so I'd hang out with him beyond just giving him rides. He said he didn't have many friends here yet since he was new to the school, and since I already had an established friend group, he was trying to fit in with them. He asked if I blocked him because I don't like him, and it was hard to explain that no, I don't like him, but that doesn't mean I don't love him. I tried to explain my hostility by pointing out our parents' favoritism, and Felix replied with something like, "You're right. They do seem to like me better. Maybe you're adopted." He's never really taken that seriously. We both laughed it off. I asked Felix to describe how Emma acted with him, and from what I could understand, Emma and her friend commented on his appearance often, knew he was at the gym routinely, and they visited him a few times while he was trying to work out. Emma frequently offered him rides and insisted that he come over to her apartment to drink as he'd never done it before. He didn't tell me sooner because he doesn't know what behaviors are okay or not, no shit, and thought Emma just wanted to be his friend. He said once they were studying together in the library and she put her head on his shoulder when she was tired. Another time she helped him pick out clothes when they ran into each other at the mall. He said she was always touching his arm when they talked, and she once straightened his collar before a presentation. Little things that aren't exactly crossing a line, but together painted a picture I didn't like. I gave him a crash course on relationship boundaries and why neither of their behavior was okay, and advised him not to flirt so much with everyone. Felix said he just tries to treat women like he treats guys, but promised to try and curb his behavior. He seemed genuinely sorry and said he'd be more mindful in the future, especially with my friends and girlfriends. After talking to Felix, I figured I needed to hear Emma's side, too. We texted back and forth for a bit before agreeing to meet. I had a few exchanges with Emma that I'll just condense into one when we finally met in person at a park near her apartment. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping well, which made me feel both guilty and vindicated at the same time. She said that when we had our argument over the lake, my anger came out of nowhere and it scared her that I seemed like I was accusing her of cheating. She said she had no idea I was feeling this way and wished I had brought it up sooner. She apologized for being close to Felix, but reminded me that I've never went into detail about my history with him. She said she thought I'd be happy they got along so well. I apologized for not communicating. When I brought up the texts, Emma opened their DMs for me to point out the one that bothered me, but I could barely explain why they did. I asked why she invited Felix on the trip, and she said she mentioned we had plans to go, and Felix seemed interested. She claimed she was just being polite by including him. However, she showed me texts where Felix asked if he could come over, not the other way around like he claimed. She denied ever visiting him at the gym or commenting on his appearance beyond normal compliments you'd give any friend. She admitted they had gotten close, but insisted it was purely platonic and that she saw him as a little brother figure. She said she'd been making an effort with him because she knew how important family was to me, even though I complained about him sometimes. Emma said he'd cut him off if this bothered me, but I told her we needed a break because whether the interest Felix described was true or not, I believed it. She started crying when I said break, and asked if I meant breaking up. I said I didn't know yet, but I just needed time to think. She was very emotional but eventually understood that it was my own issue and not just something she did. She thanked me for being honest with her and supported that I wanted to work on my insecurities. There was a lot of back and forth between the two of them that I've left out. So, at this point, I was exhausted. Their stories didn't match up and I had no idea who to believe. Part of me wanted to believe Emma because I love her, but another part of me felt like I'd seen the signs with my own eyes. But yeah, I confronted Felix about the contradictions in their stories and he seemed nervous. He stood by what he said and suggested Emma may have skipped class to see him at the gym. He did in fact go over to her place to drink. And when he described what happened, his words were all over the place and his story kept changing. First he said it was just him, Emma, and a couple others. Then he said there were like 10 people there. Then he said maybe it was more like 5 or 6. He couldn't keep the details straight. Felix is a bad liar, so I felt this was a cover-up and demanded to tell me if he slept with Emma. He got really flustered and denied it, but his face was bright red. He claimed his memory was hazy because the others gave him way too much alcohol and went on about how he was so drunk that he threw up in the bathroom. He said he barely remembered parts of the night, that they played some drinking game and that someone, he thought Emma, helped him to the bathroom when he got sick. He said Emma told him he could crash on her couch, but he insisted on going home and someone drove him. I didn't fully believe him. I know his tells and he seemed like he was lying. I asked Emma about this and she didn't see him get sick, which makes more sense as she's very responsible with alcohol, and I don't think she would let someone she cares about overdo it. She said he had maybe 3 beers total and seemed fine when he left. Definitely not blackout drunk like he was implying. I don't know why they'd tell me about this in the first place, but I'm starting to think they drunkenly slept together and now they can't get their story straight. The other day, Felix notably cut back on his affectionate/flirty behavior with some of his friends, so it seems like he's trying to show me he can listen to my advice. I saw him talking to one of his friends, and he kept a good amount of distance between them. Didn't touch them once, but I feel like he wouldn't listen to me that much if he wasn't super guilty, which almost makes me believe more that he had sex with Emma. I said some pretty mean things to him when we were alone, but I regret it now because I'm probably overthinking. It would be really out of character for both of them to have an affair, as Emma was always loyal before this shit and Felix has never cared for dating. I kinda wanna make Felix send a mock wanna go out? Text to Emma to see if she was lying about her feelings for him, but if she says yes, I'll just feel like ass. And if she says no, I still won't know if she's being honest or just saying that because she knows he wouldn't actually be interested. I'm so tired of feeling paranoid, and I wasn't prepared for Emma's absence to be so surreal to me, and now I just feel detached from reality. I haven't been sleeping well. I keep checking my phone hoping for a text from her. Then remember we're on a break and feel sick all over again. I've contemplated contacting the others at the drinking night to hear their story, but I also just want to focus on other things right now. I think I'll take the comments' advice and look into counseling. It's been a tough few weeks since this all happened. My parents called me yesterday asking why Felix seems so down, and I had to lie and say I had no idea. I just don't know who to believe anymore, or if I'm just making all this up in my head because of my issues with Felix. I guess that's it for now. I might update again if anything significant happens, but right now I'm just trying to get through each day. Thanks for reading this far if you did. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Parents gave me away to my grandparents when my brother was born. Years later, I tried to surprise them with an expensive dinner, but they skipped it to buy my brother's beat a gift instead. I want to make something abundantly clear. I've never been the favorite child in my family. This isn't some exaggeration or a false belief that I've concocted in my mind. It's something that has been a very real and prominent aspect of my life growing up. My parents never hid the fact that my younger brother's life held more value to them than mine. For context, my mother became pregnant with my brother just a year after I was born. While it wasn't a pregnancy they had planned in any way, my parents were still overjoyed at the idea of expanding their family. However, what started as excitement quickly transformed into anxiety when the doctors ran some tests and discovered the possibility of serious health issues with the baby. These weren't just some minor concerns, but significant enough that my parents were faced with the heartbreaking decision of whether or not to terminate the pregnancy. It was a difficult time for them, but they ultimately chose to continue with the pregnancy, fully aware of what might lie ahead. When my brother, Jackson, was born, their fears were realized. He had some significant heart defects that required immediate attention. My parents were devastated. Jackson needed multiple surgeries just to survive, and he spent a significant amount of time in the hospital. His health became the central focus of my family's life, and this shift had a profound impact on everything, including the way I was treated. My parents were consumed by fear, love, and guilt over Jackson's condition. And while I understand that they were dealing with something incredibly difficult, it also meant that I was, in many ways, sidelined. During the time my brother was in the hospital, I ended up staying with my grandparents because my parents were simply too preoccupied with Jackson's medical needs. They rarely visited me during this period. I tried not to hold this against them. I understood, even at a young age, that Jackson's health took precedence, and my parents were doing the best they could. Plus, I genuinely enjoyed my time with my grandparents. They were warm and attentive. Every morning, my grandmother would cook me breakfast, and then we would spend hours together doing simple things around the house, whether it was baking cookies or tending to her garden. My grandfather would take me to the park or read me stories. Both of them filled the gaps that were left by my parents' absence, almost becoming a second set of parents for me. Eventually, Jackson's health improved, and my parents were able to bring him home from the hospital. You'd think that this would have been the point where my parents came to collect me, right? They'd want to bring me back too, to reunite the family. But no, that wasn't the case. My mom, still overwhelmed by the stress of Jackson's recovery and the sheer exhaustion of managing a sick child, decided that she wasn't ready to take on the responsibility of 2 kids. She told my grandparents that they would need to keep caring for me for a little longer. My dad, busy with work and trying to juggle the financial burden of Jackson's medical bills, didn't offer much help either. My grandparents, who truly loved having me around, didn't protest much. They were more than happy to keep me with them. And while I did feel a pang of sadness knowing that I wasn't going back home, I wasn't completely devastated. I was still in a place where I felt loved, and that comforted me. I think the real trouble began when years went by and my parents still didn't show any inclination to bring me back home. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement had stretched out indefinitely. I would only get to see them every other weekend, and even that wasn't guaranteed. Sometimes my dad was too busy with work, and other times they simply didn't make the effort to come and see me. It became the norm that my grandparents were my primary caregivers, and my parents became something like visitors in my life rather than actual parents. When I started going to school, it was my grandparents who took care of everything. They would drop me off in the morning and pick me up in the afternoon. They were there from the time I woke up until they tucked me into bed. They made sure I had my school supplies, helped with my homework, and ensured I was healthy. My parents, on the other hand, never checked in with me. It didn't matter to them whether I went to school every day or even how I was doing academically. If I got sick, it was my grandparents who looked after me. It was as if my parents had completely handed over their responsibilities to them. When they did come to visit me, their conversations revolved solely around Jackson. They would go on and on to my grandparents about how wonderful Jackson was as a son, how brave he was for recovering from his surgeries, and how much progress he was making. I don't think they ever once asked my grandparents about me, how I was doing, what was going on in my life, or how I was feeling. I started to feel completely invisible. I can't even recall a single moment where my parents and I spent time together, just the three of us. There was no one-on-one time, no effort to rebuild any bond with me. Everything was about Jackson. Then came the moment that I'll never forget, Jackson's birthday party. My parents threw a huge celebration for him since he was doing so well. They had invited friends, family, neighbors, everyone. My grandparents brought me along with them. Throughout the party, I couldn't shake the deep feeling of jealousy that was gnawing at me. Watching Jackson looking so happy with my parents doting on him endlessly. The whole event was centered around him, and while I knew it was his special day, I couldn't help but feel completely left out. Here I was a child too, but all the attention, love, and care I longed for was being lavished on my brother. I don't know exactly when or how, but the overwhelming emotions of seeing my parents around my younger brother just bubbled up, and before I knew it, I burst loudly into tears in front of everyone. I remember feeling so ashamed in that moment, knowing that everyone could see me unraveling. My grandparents, bless them, quickly took me to a room and tried their best to comfort me, but the sadness and jealousy were too much. I think some of the other guests noticed as well and tried to offer kind words, but nothing really made me feel better. It wasn't about the presents or the party. It was about the attention and love I was so starved for, and watching my parents shower all of that on Jackson was just too much for me to bear. Later, after the birthday party, my parents and grandparents had a huge fight. Apparently, my parents were deeply embarrassed by my emotional outburst at the party. They felt it was too childish of me to cry in front of everyone, and in their eyes, my behavior had caused unnecessary attention to fall on them. It wasn't just about me being upset. It had invited people to question my living situation. People had started to ask why I was never at home with my parents, why I was being raised by my grandparents, and whether my parents were neglecting me. My parents were angry that this scrutiny had been directed at them, and they saw my crying as the trigger that set everything off. I could hear them blaming me for putting them in a position where they had to explain themselves. After the argument, a decision was made. I would move back home to live with my parents. This was something I had wanted for years, yet when it finally happened, I didn't feel any of the excitement I thought I would. Instead, I was filled with apprehension. The first few days back home were painfully awkward. The house felt foreign to me, and I constantly felt out of place, like I was intruding into a space that wasn't mine. My parents had their own routines, built around Jackson's needs and schedule. They barely acknowledged me, and if they did, it was only in passing. I had hoped that moving back home would finally mean they would take notice of me, that they would care about me the way they did Jackson. But it was quickly clear that nothing had changed. Jackson was still the center of their world, and I remained on the outskirts, ignored and forgotten. The only thing I was grateful for was that I had my own room. I spent most of my time there when I wasn't at school. It wasn't because I was happy to be alone, but because being around my parents made me feel more invisible than when I was away from them. At least in my room, I didn't have to witness the affection they showered on Jackson while I sat unnoticed. I would stay there for hours, doing my homework or just lying on my bed, trying to make sense of it all. Throughout my entire school life, my parents never showed the slightest interest in my education or achievements. Not once did they ask about my homework, nor did they ever attend any of my award ceremonies. Even when I participated in school plays or extracurricular activities, they simply couldn't be bothered to show up or even acknowledge that I was involved in anything. It was as if nothing I did mattered to them. Despite their complete disregard for my accomplishments, I made sure to excel in school. The few times my grandparents tried to step in and remind my parents of my successes, it was met with either silence or outright dismissal. They would encourage my parents to show some appreciation or even just a bit of pride in me, but my parents would either ignore the comments or scoff as if it was of no consequence. It hurt to see how little they cared. What made it even worse was the contrast in how they treated Jackson. Jackson has never performed well academically. He struggled in school and often got into trouble. He would bring home poor grades, and sometimes his teachers even called home about his behavior. But none of that seemed to faze my parents. They never held him accountable for his lack of effort, and they certainly didn't discipline him. If he ever did remotely average on a test or managed to achieve anything small, my parents would celebrate as if it were a monumental achievement. They would order pizza or take us all out to his favorite restaurant, making it a big family event. When I finally graduated high school and got accepted into college, I was fortunate enough to earn a partial scholarship. Even though it covered some of the costs, I was still nervous about how I would manage the remaining expenses. At the time, I asked my parents if they had set up any kind of college fund for me. Part of me already knew what the answer would be, but I had to ask. As expected, they immediately informed me that all the money they were saving was for Jackson only. They said he was the youngest and that he would need to be taken care of in the future. My father bluntly told me that as the oldest, I should learn to take care of myself. He did offer to help me apply for an education loan, which I would then have to pay off later when I got a job. It was incredibly painful to hear that my own parents continued to not prioritize me. While other parents are generally excited and proud to help their children start their journey into adulthood, mine were basically telling me I was on my own. Thankfully, my grandparents had seen this coming long before I did, and they had been quietly planning for my future. They had set up a trust fund for me in secret years ago. When they finally revealed this to me and told me how I never had to worry about college, I was in complete shock. I couldn't believe that someone had actually cared enough to do something like this for me. I cried tears of joy because for the first time, I felt truly supported. Felt surreal. No one had ever gone out of their way to look out for me in this way, and here were my grandparents, who not only saw my potential but had taken steps to ensure I could go to college without having to worry about the financial burden. But when my parents found out about the trust fund that my grandparents had set up for me, they didn't share in my joy or relief. Instead of being happy for me, they immediately turned the conversation towards Jackson. Their first response was to ask my grandparents if they had also set up a trust fund for him. My grandfather calmly pointed out that they had decided to take care of me specifically because my parents had always prioritized Jackson. They had seen for years how I had been overlooked, and they wanted to make sure I had the chance to succeed without being held back. Of course, this did not sit well with my parents. They saw it as unfair, and they immediately started a heated argument with my grandparents about how both grandchildren should be treated equally. They accused my grandparents of playing favorites and insisted that Jackson deserved their money too simply because he was the youngest in the family. They couldn't accept that my grandparents had chosen to help me because they recognized how neglected I had been all these years. It was like my parents were blind to the fact that they had already spent Jackson's entire life treating him like the center of the universe. Despite the pressure and accusations, my grandparents stood their ground. They didn't back down or let my parents manipulate the situation. They explained that this wasn't about favoritism. It was about ensuring that I had the same opportunities Jackson was already being given by my parents. My grandparents had made their decision out of love and fairness because they knew that I hadn't been given the same attention and support that Jackson had always received. Seeing that they couldn't sway my grandparents, my parents then turned their efforts towards me. They tried to guilt me into sharing some of the trust funds with them, insisting that I should invest in Jackson's future when it came time for him to go to college. They framed it as if I was being selfish by keeping the money for myself, even though it wasn't my money to give away. It was my grandparents' gift to me. I refused. I told them that it wasn't my responsibility to provide for Jackson's education, especially when they had already made it clear that their financial priorities were always with him. My parents were furious with my decision, but there was nothing they could do. For once, they didn't have the upper hand. I wasn't going to give away what had been given to me out of love and care just because they thought Jackson deserved everything. It was a painful moment, realizing that even in this, my parents couldn't be happy for me. But it was also empowering because I finally understood that I had to stand up for myself, even if it meant going against my parents. As a result, after I left for college, my relationship with my parents became virtually non-existent. They stopped pretty much all communication with me as they continued to believe what I did was selfish towards my brother. Jackson and I had also never been close. He was comfortable being the favored child, and with me out of the house, he didn't have to compete for our parents' attention. He never once called me to check in or visited me during my time at college, which wasn't surprising but still hurt. The only people who truly cared and remained in my life were my grandparents. They were my emotional support, the ones who always checked in on me, encouraging me, and making sure I didn't feel entirely abandoned. But then, During my third year of college, my world was turned upside down. My grandfather passed away unexpectedly after suffering a heart attack in his sleep. His death shattered me. It was, without a doubt, the darkest time of my life. I stayed with my grandmother for several days as we both grieved together. It was an unimaginable loss for the two of us. My grandfather had been a father figure to me in every way that mattered, and losing him left a gaping hole in my heart. During this painful time, something unexpected happened. I reconnected with my parents and Jackson. All of us were shaken by my grandfather's death, and for the first time in years, we found ourselves bonding over shared grief. Even though I had so many unresolved feelings towards my parents, there was something about the situation that brought us all a little closer. It felt like, for a brief moment, the walls between us had come down. My grandfather had even left behind a letter for my mom. In it, he urged her to stop ignoring my existence and to take care of both her children, not just Jackson. He reminded her of the importance of family and how she couldn't afford to keep treating one child better than the other the way she had all these years. I guess something shifted after that. My parents, perhaps for the first time, seemed to feel genuinely guilty about how they had treated me. Slowly, they began to make an effort to reconnect. They started calling me more frequently, asking about my studies, showing some interest in my life. It wasn't perfect. The pain of the past couldn't be undone so easily, but it was something. I was still angry with them for all the years they had ignored me, for all the times I needed them and they weren't there. But at the same time, I could see they were trying, and it gave me a small sense of hope. I wanted to believe that they could change, that maybe, just maybe, they were starting to realize their mistakes. When I finally graduated from college, my parents actually showed up for the ceremony. They took pictures with me, proud smiles on their faces. It felt surreal to have them there, considering all the years they hadn't even acknowledged my achievements. After the ceremony, my parents, Jackson, my grandmother, and I went out for lunch to celebrate. It was one of the rare moments when I felt like we were a family, even if only for a little while. For once, I wasn't invisible to them, and that small act of acknowledgement meant more to me than I could express. This year, after landing my first proper high-paying job and receiving my big paycheck, I wanted to do something special to celebrate. I thought, why not share this moment with my family? I hadn't had much time with my parents growing up, so I decided I would surprise them with something meaningful. A cruise trip, just the three of us. No distractions, no obligations, just quality time together to make up for what we had missed over the years. I knew deep down that I craved their attention, even after all these years of feeling overlooked. As for Jackson, I planned to buy him something nice later so he wouldn't feel left out. I wanted this to be a surprise for my parents, so instead of informing them over the phone, I booked a reservation at a fancy, expensive restaurant where we could have a nice dinner and celebrate. When I called my parents to invite them, they seemed excited, thrilled even, about visiting the restaurant. They promised they would be there on time. But when I arrived at the restaurant right on time, my parents were nowhere to be seen. At first, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were caught in traffic or running just a little late. But after 15, 20, then 30 minutes had passed, I started to get nervous. I called them multiple times, and it wasn't until the fifth call that they finally answered. My dad casually mentioned that they were finishing up some last-minute errands, as if it was no big deal, and that they would be reaching the restaurant soon. Annoyed but still hopeful, I stayed at the table, waiting for them to arrive. The server kept coming by, asking if the rest of my party had arrived, and I felt more embarrassed with each passing minute. I didn't want to look like someone who had been stood up at a nice restaurant, so eventually, I ordered food for myself as I was hungry. I finished my meal, still sitting alone, staring at the empty seats across from me. My calls to my parents went unanswered after that. An hour passed, and then nearly 2 hours. Finally, after my 15th try, my dad picked up the phone. He started apologizing, but I was beyond frustrated at this point. I started yelling at him about what they had been doing all this time and why they couldn't have just told me if they weren't going to make it. "Oh, just stop complaining," he said dismissively. "I'm sorry we're late, but your mother and I got held up at the shop. We found the perfect birthday gift for your brother. But when we got to the counter, we realized your mother had left her card at home. so we had to drive back to get it. Thankfully, the shop held our gift, and we were able to purchase it just now. Jackson is going to be so happy with what we picked out for him. By the way, have you bought anything for your brother yet? You do remember his birthday is in 2 weeks, right? At that moment, I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Here I was, trying to share a special moment with my parents, to celebrate my achievements and bring us closer. But once again, Jackson was all that mattered to them. They had spent the entire evening shopping for his birthday gift while not even bothering that I had been sitting alone at the restaurant waiting for them. Not only had they missed the dinner, but they had the nerve to ask if I had remembered to buy something for Jackson. I was fuming, but I tried to keep my composure as I told my dad that they could have shopped for Jackson any other day. They should have respected my time, especially knowing this was something I had gone out of my way to plan for them. My dad's response just made it worse. He brushed off my concerns and said they were on their way now and that we could talk about this after they reached. However, I didn't want to stay there any longer as I felt so pissed at my parents. I paid my check, got up from the table, and left. On my drive back home, my phone started buzzing. My parents were calling me, leaving voicemail after voicemail, saying they had finally arrived at the restaurant and couldn't find me anywhere. I ignored their calls, feeling too angry and hurt to even think about talking to them. Later that night, my mom sent me a series of messages. Instead of apologizing or acknowledging that they had messed up, she attacked me. She called me rude for not being there when they finally arrived, as if I was the one who had wasted their time. She had the audacity to say that this was why they didn't care about my irrelevant plans in the first place, since I was always so hot-headed, and how they were right to have gone shopping for Jackson because his gift was more important to buy anyways. According to her, their priorities were perfectly justified, and I was the one in the wrong for getting pissed at them. Reading her messages, I felt a wave of hurt and anger again. I had poured my heart into planning something special, and all I got in return was the same disregard I had felt my entire life. I just couldn't keep dealing with their hurtful words and their constant disregard for my feelings. After everything I had done to make this moment special, I was left feeling more alone than ever, realizing that no matter what I did, Jackson would always come first, and I would always be an afterthought. I blocked her without bothering to send her a reply. ITA for leaving the restaurant and not waiting around for my parents after they did not show up? Update 1. The reason I bought the cruise tickets in the first place was because my parents had been showing some significant changes in their behavior after my grandpa's death. I thought they finally saw me as a human being and as their child, but I guess I was wrong again. I'm glad my eyes are open now, and from today onwards, I'm done trying to beg and cry for their attention. I will be blocking both of them on my phone now. Coming on to the update, it seems my parents have filled Jackson in on the whole incident, and he called me this week to discuss everything. My brother believes that what our parents did wasn't wrong, and that I should have respected them enough to wait for their arrival instead of leaving at the last minute. He mentioned how our parents were very disappointed in me, and had reached out to him to complain about my actions. He asked me to attend his upcoming birthday party so I could apologize to our parents, but I declined his invitation and asked him to leave me alone for the time being. He did try to argue with me further, but I firmly reminded him that my relationship with our parents had nothing to do with him, and he would never understand what I was going through. Update 2. So, it's been a month since my last update. For everyone asking, I did consider canceling my cruise tickets, but then I realized I had spent a significant amount of my paycheck buying them, so I should make better use of it. Hence, I decided to take my best friend and my grandma with me on the trip instead of my parents. Suffice it to say, the three of us had a wonderful time, and I pretty much forgot about all the drama with my parents. This trip was a well-deserved break for all of us. However, after the trip, when I posted a few pictures from our cruise, I started receiving messages from my dad on FB calling me selfish and ungrateful for taking grandma on the trip and not inviting them either. I had forgotten to block my parents from FB since I thought they hardly ever used it. The audacity of my dad to even expect me to take him after everything he and mom have put me through. He also told me how sad mom is after I have blocked her, and how he wishes for me to just go to therapy and get over my childish behavior so I can stop punishing them for the rest of my life. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's been 4 months since my last update, and I am doing fine. I have blocked both my parents and also Jackson. I will admit that since cutting them off, my life feels much more peaceful. I have come to accept the fact that sometimes family isn't what you're born into but what you choose. Surrounding myself with supportive friends and loved ones has made all the difference. My grandma and I still continue to have a great relationship, and I plan on taking her for more trips in the future. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Wife divorced me and went on a vacation with her affair partner, assuming she will still get a part from my parents' huge trust fund. But what she got was a lawsuit instead. Hi, I'm Aaron, 30M, so I'm just gonna try putting it all down here. For all my life, I've known that my friends were friends with me because, according to them, I'm the trust fund baby. They always tried getting close to me because they thought I'd be throwing lavish parties all around the world and sponsoring booze at parties, and they always left me when I turned out to be nothing like that. It's true my parents have a huge trust fund for me, but I know how hard they worked for it. And I know that the wealth wasn't built in a day, and one mistake could absolutely ruin my father's company. So I work hard every freaking day. I work hard to expand what my father started. But recently I was very close to making that one mistake. Ashley, the love of my life, my wife. Ashley, 28F. Throughout college, I didn't date anybody. I'm not the type who dates or hooks up with women casually. I always wanted to date to marry. But when the news about my parents' wealth spread, I attracted all the wrong kinds of company. You see, when you have money, you become popular and people want to live off you. I did lend money to some of my friends and sponsored the occasional booze, but nothing extravagant, nothing that people expect from a trust fund baby. I believe that doing something in moderation isn't bad and, in fact, is important because you need to be a part of society too. So I tried being in everyone's good books but rarely trusted anybody. During my graduation party, I met Ashley. She didn't seem to know me and I started casually talking to her and we really hit it off instantly. We exchanged phone numbers and on our first date, I took her to McDonald's and we had the time of our lives. She didn't seem to mind that the first date wasn't anything fancy and I fell in love. Ashley was the first love of my life. She wasn't boring and didn't seem to be trying hard to impress me. She was just being herself. Also, she was really smart. With her, I felt normal and seemed to get an image beyond my money. After 1 month of dating, when I took her to meet my parents, she didn't act surprised at all and seemed to accept that I was rich with nothing but neutrality. I took that as a positive sign that my wealth didn't faze her at all. At that time, it didn't occur to me that she probably wasn't surprised because that was part of her plan from day one, and that she absolutely knew who I was and knew how I wasn't dating anybody, so winning me over was all a carefully crafted strategy. She was full of elegance during her meeting with my parents. She was charming and I was head over heels in love. She was the first girl I ever brought home. My parents were very excited for me. We dated for a year and during that time, she never accepted any costly gifts from me. Her reason for refusing was simply that we weren't married yet. I proposed to her after a year. She was an absolute sweetheart to my parents. She told my parents that she only had one request, that they never ask her to leave her work because she wanted to work to expand our fortune. My mother hugged her and said that they were glad I had found such a supportive wife. Ashley worked in an IT company and made a decent amount of money herself. On our second anniversary, my parents hosted a party. There, they announced that they wanted to give a gift to Ashley and proposed including her name as a beneficiary along with me. They went around introducing Ashley to everybody, including Rob, the trustee. He was an accountant on behalf of the company that looked after the legalities of the funds and investments. He was married and had a daughter. His wife was a lawyer in the same firm. Everything was taken care of and my wife's name was included as one of the beneficiaries. Ashley bonded really well with my parents and was always doing her best to keep them happy. She also worked and traveled a lot for her job. Later on, I'd come to know that she was traveling with her affair partner. Whenever my parents threw a party, she was always eager to attend and look stunning. On countless occasions at such parties, I've seen her talking to Rob in a corner, laughing a little too much, blushing with wine in her hand. And as stupid and blind in love as I was, it never once occurred to me that I should suspect her of having an affair with Rob. But all this time, these two were having an affair behind my back. Looking back at it, I'm surprised at Ashley. She's an absolute pro actor. She treated each of us so well that the mere thought of ever suspecting her seemed blasphemous. But she was just biding her time. Almost 7 years into our marriage, my parents passed away within 6 months of each other. I absolutely immersed myself in my work because it was just too difficult to deal with all the emotions when you also have to keep the company running. And that was the first time in years when Ashley started showing her true colors. After the funeral, she was distant. I thought maybe she was dealing with grief in her own way and tried giving her space. She didn't say one word to me about my parents passing away or ask how I was. I thought it was strange but secretly blamed myself for being unable to talk about how I felt either. About 2 weeks passed before I decided to get home early from work and talk it out with Ashley. I bought a bunch of pink roses on my way back. I had my own key, so I let myself in and came face to face with Rob. I was confused, so I asked him if he came to talk to me about the trust or something. Ashley came out from behind with 2 suitcases. It was then I noticed that even Rob had 2 suitcases. Ashley looked at me and said, "Oh dang, I meant to do this quietly. I was meaning to leave a note and let you know that I'm moving out, but I guess we have to do it face to face now. Yeah, so I'm leaving you, yep, you heard that right, and yeah, I'm moving in with Rob after we returned from our vacation in Italy. Your parents made sure that I'll get enough money to afford it. Also, we're divorcing. Rob is also going to file for divorce now. Now, don't look like a forlorn puppy. Are those flowers for me? I'll take them, thanks. Ciao." They were out of the door even before I could ask her to wait. I heard the engine revving up and then silence. And just like that, my wife of 7 years left me. Have you ever heard the expression about the world crashing down in front of you? Well, that best describes what I felt. For 2 days, I didn't leave the house. I didn't open the blinds. I was surviving on refrigerated food and then cup noodles. I never turned the TV off because I was scared of the silence. I didn't even feel like bathing. On the 3rd day, someone rang the doorbell. I thought that if I didn't open the door, they'd probably go away eventually. But that didn't happen. The bell kept on ringing, and whoever it was pressing the bell harder and longer with each go. 10 minutes went by and still the ringing didn't stop. Now there was someone banging at the door. I heard a woman's voice say, "I know you're in there. Open up right now. I'm not leaving till I talk to you." For a minute, I thought it was Ashley. But then I remembered that she was vacationing in Italy with Rob. This thought brought a fresh wave of sadness over me. But the knocking and banging wasn't stopping, so I dragged myself out of bed and started unlocking the door. I opened the door to find a red-haired woman in a 2-piece suit. She looked like she would bite my head off. She said, "Your wife ran away with my husband. Sitting here and being a wuss won't help anybody. So, oh, get up. Go take a bath and get yourself in the living room in 15 minutes. We have to talk about a lot of things." When I didn't respond, she let herself in and looked me straight in the eye and said, "What? You stink." Before heading to the bathroom, I said, "Okay, Mom." And she screamed back, "I heard that." Despite myself, I laughed. I started feeling a little humanoid after my bath, and when I returned to the living room, it was spotless, and so was the kitchen. Sandra, Rob's wife, introduced herself. She told me that she had been trying to reach me at my office for the last 2 days, but couldn't get through, so she finally decided to show up at my doorstep. She meant business. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. Sandra said that, like me, she didn't suspect that Rob was cheating on her, and she only found out when he left the house 2 days back and said that he would send his assistant to collect the rest of his things. Like me, her world was shattered too. But she didn't wallow in self-pity. She started digging up dirt. The first thing she did was go through Rob's laptop. He stored his work stuff there, but he had his Facebook logged in. She wasted no time going through his chats and finding out with whom he was having an affair. And once she was sure, she swooped like a hawk. She had gone through every document related to my trust fund and was pretty sure that Rob was taking out money for his own use. It started small so that it went unnoticed, but eventually, he had become bold and careless because he was being aided by one of the beneficiaries, who was none other than Ashley. Part of me wished that she was lying, but she wasn't. Sandra had all the proof and was ready to take them down. I was still hesitating when Sandra said, "I have a little daughter. I will wring out every single penny from Rob, and I will absolutely wreck Ashley. I don't care what you think. I just wanted to inform you. You don't have to be a part of it if you don't want to. I saw how determined and confident she was, and I instantly knew I could trust this woman. So I was on board. We shook hands. As my ex-wife was vacationing in Italy, we were hatching a plan that was going to cost her dearly. Ashley and Rob were back from their 10-day trip to Italy. Sandra and I were waiting for their call because we wanted to see what their reactions would be when the penny dropped. It was a Monday and I was at work when I received a call from Ashley. As soon as I picked up, she launched into a rant. What the hell is happening? What does Rob mean that we're in trouble? And where's my money? I said, you mean my parents' money that Rob was using to buy you gifts and probably that apartment you've moved into? I hope you heard from my lawyer. It's Sandra, Rob's wife, who, by the way, also works for the firm. I told her I had to go and hung up before she could say a single word. When I got out of work that day, Ashley was waiting outside. I pretended not to notice her and walked toward my car, but she blocked my way. In my whole life of knowing her, I had never seen her so ruffled by anything. She asked me to explain things to her because apparently Rob's anxious retelling of the events wasn't making sense, and she wanted to hear it from me in layman's terms. I told her that I had heard from her lawyer about the divorce filing, the only thing being that she wasn't going to get a single penny. Oh boy, the look on her face. Never in her wildest dreams did she think this could be happening. I could see the panic grow inside her. I was filled with sadistic pleasure and in the next moment, an overwhelming sense of guilt for putting her in this situation. I still loved her, and it's difficult to watch the person you love getting hurt. I had to get out of there quickly so that she couldn't manipulate me. I walked past her and started moving toward my car. I heard her screaming from behind. She was asking me to stop. The last thing I heard before I got in the car was, "How could you do this to me?" I felt it like a stab and wanted to lash out so badly and say that I could ask her the same damn question. But instead, I got in my car and drove off. I could see her looking after the car, absolutely bewildered, in my rearview mirror. Meanwhile, Rob had been served with a notice that he was going to be terminated from the company. He was spoiling the reputation of the company, and apparently, the news had leaked and a lot of clients had called asking to terminate their contracts. So the best the company could do as damage control was fire Rob. Sandra had a lot of lawyer friends and arranged for the best lawyer, and she was sure of winning the case and getting custody. I was getting all these updates from Sandra while driving back home. I felt much lighter. I came back home and wrote this up. My interaction with Ashley left me feeling very restless, and I wanted to vent. Do you guys think I'm going too hard on Ashley? In reality, I don't. Date 1. Hi everybody. I'm back with an update. It's been a week. Thanks for your support. Thanks for pulling me up when I was feeling so confused. I had my first therapy session and I showed him this Reddit post and he said it's a good way to cope. He said it's natural to grieve the person you lost, in this case, Ashley, so it's only natural that I was feeling so overwhelmed after I dropped the bomb. As for what happened this week, I'm going to try to summarize it for you all. Ashley called me again. This time her tone had softened. Her voice sounded muffled, like she had been crying. She asked me if I had dinner. When I said no, she said, "Do you want me to come over and cook it for you?" I was taken aback. I think she took my silence as a yes because next she said that she would be at my house in half an hour. I finally found my voice and said, "No, you won't. Are you kidding? After what you've done, you want to come here, cook me dinner and play house?" She cooed, "Baby, no. I know things have been bad, but we can talk." I was losing it then. I think I shouted at this point and went, "Bad? You call what you did bad? Just bad? It was evil. It was brutal and selfish. To hell with you. I don't ever want to see your face again. WTF is wrong with you?" Next thing she said made me want to throw up. She asked me to stop overreacting. I think it was a turning point for me. The guilt over hurting her had been eating away inside me. But at this point, I saw her real face. A woman who didn't regret her actions one bit and would do it all over again in a heartbeat. The call was a move to try to manipulate me, a trap. She was oblivious to my realization and was going on about how I was making her out to be a gold digger in the lawsuit, but how untrue that was because she was earning and had a job herself. I wanted to point out how I had paid all of her student debt, so if she was living comfortably now, it was because of me and my family. She said that the only reason she wanted to come over was that she thought we should talk and get back together and I should withdraw my lawsuit because it was pointless. I couldn't help myself from asking, "What about Rob?" She said that Rob was just someone different and she was having an affair with him because he brought a change to her monotonous life. Then she started blaming me for being away for work and for never being there for her. She said her affair with Rob was passionate and I lacked it very much, and instead of apologizing to her, I was giving her a lawsuit. At this point, I was convinced that she was trying to give me an ear bleed. I told her that if she had been having so many problems, she could have talked to me about it or we could have gone to marriage counseling. Cheating was never the solution. She diverted the topic and started insisting on coming over. I cut the call and called Sandra. I told her what happened. Sandra asked me to ring her back and ask her to come over. She said she was going to come over too. She asked me to play along and see what her real motive was. So I cut my call with Sandra and called up Ashley. She sounded so smug when she picked up. She said that she knew I would come around and that she'd be there in half an hour. Before Ashley came, Sandra arrived. I didn't know what her plan was, and there wasn't enough time for her to explain. She went inside and asked me to make Ashley sit in the dining room. Sandra said that she would make a special appearance in this drama. Ashley turned up about 40 minutes later, and it was obvious that she had made an effort to look good. She did look good. She got inside, kissed me, and was heading toward the bedroom where Sandra was. So I stopped her and asked her to sit in the dining room. She turned to me and pouted and said, "But why, sweetheart? Did I lose my right so easily? Was your love so weak? Will you not fight for us, baby?" At this point, Sandra came out of the bedroom. Ashley looked too stunned to speak and croaked out something like, "What the hell?" Sandra smiled at Ashley and said, "Ah, finally we meet the woman who is dating my useless husband, Rob the cheater. Oh, and yes, you did lose your right to the bedroom." Ashley swung around at me. "How could you replace me so easily? You're sleeping with Rob's wife after taking away all my happiness. We had so many debts and now we won't even get the damn trust fund money. And God knows who leaked the news, but now Rob is jobless. I might get fired too. You're just so selfish." Sandra piped in and said, "What do you mean we have debts? Is it like a joint loan thing? Were you helping Rob, Miss, blank, withdraw the funds or what?" Ashley swung at her then. "Hell yeah, I was. I've supported Rob from day one. Do you think he could have planned something like that on his own? Obviously I helped him. Unlike you, you evil witch. You've been nothing but condescending to him. That's why he chose me over you. Get out of here. How can you be here when your husband is jobless? Why the hell don't you give a statement in his favor and help him out?" Sandra smiled sweetly and then told me that she thought I ought to send Ashley home. The job was done. I got the cue and held the door open for Ashley. Ashley stormed out while hurling a volley of abuse at us. When she left, I turned towards Sandra and asked, "What just happened?" Sandra pressed stop on a tape and then winked at me. Her eyes were shining. She said excitedly, "We got a confession, Aaron. We'll ruin them. I told you I'm not letting both of them escape. That, my friends, is Sandra for you. She's clever and ruthless. If I were Ashley and Rob, I'd be terrified of her. She's just too good at what she does." Before heading out, Sandra confessed that, obviously, it was her who had leaked the news about Rob. I told her that her intelligence was rubbing off on me and I had figured at least this much out, that she had something to do with it. Guys, I'll keep you updated. The game is finally beginning. Update 2. Well, I'm back with an update too soon, I guess, but I couldn't wait to tell you guys. Sandra is an absolute ruthless killer. She sent the tape to Ashley's company with a detailed explanation of what was going on. She said in the note that someone who could go to that extent to fool the people who care about her wasn't a credible person to work in the company and would probably try to embezzle funds from them if she saw an opening. Sandra also knew one of the business partners in Ashley's firm who happened to be her old friend. Sandra's friend abruptly pulled out of a deal that she was about to sponsor and said that there were certain members on the team whose credibility she doubted. So the deal was off the table. Ashley's boss was absolutely torching himself when the news reached him. They made a swift decision to save the deal. They fired the person who was responsible for it. That's it, just like that, my ex-wife is fired from the company. Now both of them are jobless and in debt. Sandra told me that Rob had been calling her non-stop, and when she didn't pick up any calls, he started texting her. She asked him to stop annoying her and blocked his number. I'm really enjoying this now. I've also been having my sessions and my therapist tells me that Ashley should be a case study of narcissism. Lol. That was low-key funny. I laughed freely after a really long time. Anyway, I'll keep you guys updated. Oh, did I tell you guys that Rob was taken into custody and apparently Ashley had to break into her savings account to pay for his bail? Lol. Serves them right. Bye for now. Update 3. This morning Sandra called me up. She was furious. Apparently, early in the morning, Rob had drunkenly rung her doorbell. He was drunk and kept on abusing her. Her security camera recorded the whole thing. When Sandra asked him to go away, he tried breaking in. He only went away when Sandra threatened to call the police. The worst thing about this whole incident was that due to all the noise and everything, Sandra and Rob's daughter, Emily, woke up. She saw what was happening and is now traumatized. Divorce is usually hard on children, but seeing your father drunk on your doorstep, calling your mom names, and trying to break into the house is on a whole different level. Emily has since refused to leave her room. Sandra asked me if I could go over as she had to go to the police station and file a restraining order. She couldn't find a babysitter at such short notice. I told her I wouldn't. Phoned in at work asking them to call me if they needed anything. As soon as I reached, Sandra was out the door. She told me that if Emily came out, I should give her some food because she hadn't even had breakfast. As soon as Sandra left, I knocked on Emily's room. When nobody responded, I got a pin and broke the lock. I don't know why, but I was feeling paranoid in that silence. I was thinking of the worst-case scenarios. I just couldn't sit still while the child was suffering. When I burst into her room, there was nobody there and I was hyperventilating. But then a small movement caught my eye. Emily was hiding under the bed. A little girl of 3 or 4 years who looked just like her mom except for her hair was looking at me with eyes full of terror. She was stuttering in fear and somehow managed to ask me if I was her dad's friend and if Rob had sent me. I knelt down and introduced myself. I told her that instead of her dad, I was actually her mom's friend. She seemed to relax a bit at that. Then she started anxiously looking out the window and asked if her dad was gone. I said he was because her mom was like a tigress who would protect her cub with everything. She started crying then as she told me how she was afraid that Rob would break in and hurt her mom. I told her that I would never let that happen. My heart was breaking for this innocent child who had not only lost a dad but also seen what a horrible man her father was. I talked her into coming out and playing her favorite Disney movie. I heated up some lasagna and fed her. Sandra tells me that when she came back, she found Emily lying on my chest and sleeping peacefully, and I drooling into her favorite pillow. That night, when I was about to leave, Emily clung to my legs and wouldn't let me go. She kept crying, and then in the end, she said she was scared that Rob would turn up again and there would be no one to protect her mom. I joked that her mom didn't need protecting, but I shut up when Sandra rolled her eyes at me. It would be really difficult to explain restraining order to a child, so I decided to stay the night. Emily slept peacefully, and so did I. The next morning, Sandra made us amazing pancakes and I directly left for work. Emily made me promise that I would come to sleep at their house again that night. So yeah, I guess that's my life now. I have to spend my nights at Sandra's house. Sandra is trying to find a good child psychologist, but as of now has had no luck. I'll update you guys after the first hearing. Date for... Okay. Phew. It's been a long time since I last updated you guys. Right? Well, the first hearing is done. What a layman like me has figured out is this. Ashley and Rob are absolutely cooked. Yeah, I mean it, brother, they are cooked like barbecue. We have such alarming evidence against them that it's actually an open and shut case. But you know how courts are, so yeah, it's gonna drag on for a while. Sandra believes that it won't take more than half a year. She also believes that both of them will be serving time in jail. As for the divorce, Ashley and Rob obviously won't get a penny. Rob has to pay child support as well. Ashley and Rob were job hunting but with no luck. I have news that Rob is working as a janitor in a nearby club. Outside the court, we saw Rob getting beat up by some loan sharks. Things are looking grim for that man. He's finished. When he saw Sandra outside the court, he ran to her and fell at her feet. He kept begging her to take him back. But by now, we know better. Sandra's lawyer tells us that the case is so in Sandra's favor that Rob won't even get visitation rights. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My wife and stepdaughter wanted to move into her ex's house, but I refused because I wasn't comfortable with the idea. So they left me for weeks. Now they are back, but it's too late. My wife, let's call her Allison, and my stepdaughter, Hannah, have been living with me for the past 3 years. Allison, 42F, and I, 46M, started dating 5 years back and got married 2 years ago. Hannah is 16, and Allison has had full custody of her daughter ever since she got divorced, which was 12 years ago. Allison and her ex were high school sweethearts, and they got married as soon as they graduated college, but according to what Allison told me, things were just not meant to be with them. Her ex was very ambitious, and after they got married, he started taking her for granted and rarely ever spent time at home. She tried marriage counseling as well, but that did not change anything, and they ended up getting divorced. So, after 6 years of marriage, she decided to put an end to it and also demanded full custody of their daughter because she didn't think that he would be up to the task of raising her on his own when she was not with him. And she was right. So he did not contest it either and settled for visiting her on the weekends. Then, about 3 years after the divorce, Allison decided to move away for better opportunities, and that's how she ended up with me. She got a job here where I'm from, and it is just a 6-hour drive away from her hometown, so she can visit her parents whenever she wants to, and her ex can come see their daughter on the weekends too. Her decision to move away had not been received kindly by her ex because, naturally, that would make it more inconvenient for him to see his daughter, and their relationship had become even more bitter after she moved here. Then the last nail in the coffin was when she married me, and after that, he pretty much did not have anything to do with her unless he wanted to speak about Hannah. So it was not surprising that he had not left her anything in the will but had only included Hannah in it. Allison and I had been expecting this since their relationship had not been great towards the end. When her ex was first diagnosed with problems in his heart, she had tried to bury the hatchet and be there for him, but he had rejected her attempts to be his friend. So she did not try harder either because it was very obvious that he didn't want her in his life, and so we tried to maintain our distance from him in the last stages. But after we received the news that he had left a house to Hannah, she and Allison started celebrating, which didn't really make sense to me because we already had a place to live, and that was my home here. The house that her ex had left was all the way back in their hometown, and they were talking about moving into the house, which was not something that I was comfortable with and made it known to them, which is what started this entire fight. The day that they found out from the lawyer that Hannah was going to get ownership of the house when she turned 18, she and her mother immediately started planning their future and talking about what they were going to do with the house and how they were going to renovate everything. They had received a bunch of pictures from the lawyer, and I could see that it was a lot bigger than the house that we were currently living in. But this house is mine. My entire life was based here. So, before they could let their imaginations run away, I decided to burst their bubble, and I told them that I was not comfortable with the idea of moving to this new house and leaving everything behind. That surprised them a little. I don't know why, because they should have seen this coming. Allison tried to convince me to sell the house and move with them to their hometown because for the past couple of years, she had been living here, and she really missed her family and her old friends. She said she had spent so many years with me, it was my turn to make some sacrifices for her and move with them. I thought that it was kind of unfair for her to make that comparison because when she moved here, she didn't even know that she was going to meet me. She had moved here for herself, not for me, and I brought that up with her, but she just got ticked off at me. She and Hannah had pretty much made up their minds that they wanted to move, and since they had already come to a decision, they didn't want to hear me out but just wanted to convince me to move with them. We argued back and forth for a couple of days, but eventually, they just told me that they were going to go check out the house and live there for a couple of days to test everything, and if I wanted to come, then I was welcome to do so, but if I didn't, then they would also not wait for me. After saying that, they left, and it was really hurtful for me because I felt like they had abandoned me just because I did not want to move into that house. If I'm being honest, one of the major reasons that I was not comfortable with moving there was because that house used to be Allison and her ex-husband's old house when they used to live together. Apparently, he had repurchased it a couple of years ago when he had the money, and even though he hadn't lived in it, he owned it, and it was probably for sentimental reasons. I would feel like an intruder if I lived there, and most importantly, all my family and my friends lived here, and I did not want to leave them behind. My business was also based here, so it would be quite a hassle for me to leave everything behind anyway. A few days after they were told about the house, Allison and Hannah packed some of their things and took off without me when I told them that I was not interested in seeing the house. I was quite upset when they left, but I tried very hard not to let them see it because I didn't think that they would care in the first place. It was not until after they had left that I finally allowed myself to break down, and then I spoke to my parents about what had happened, and even they did not have a solution to offer up for me. They had told me that they would be gone just for a few days, but almost 2 weeks passed, and I did not hear back from them. Not only had they left me, but they had pretty much stopped speaking to me altogether after we had that fight, and that's what really broke me. I had thought that after they would come back from their trip back home, I would speak to Allison, and I would try to sort things out with her, but after almost 10 days had passed without any contact, I started rethinking my decision. On the 12th day, I finally contacted my lawyer, and I told them that maybe it was time to draw up the divorce papers because I couldn't think of any other way out of this. Thankfully, my lawyer is a really old friend of mine, and he told me to at least speak to Allison when she came back or call her up before filing for a divorce. So I decided to wait for her to come back so we could at least talk and give our relationship one last chance before giving up on it. And 2 days after that, she finally returned with Hannah in the evening, and both of them looked really hassled. I let them in and allowed them to talk to me, hoping that maybe they were here to apologize to me for everything that happened. But instead, she just told me that they had decided to put the idea of moving into that house on hold for now because there was a lot of work to be done, and that the pictures the lawyer had shown them had definitely been from a really long time ago because when they saw the house in person it was nothing like that. For a good few minutes they continued to talk about the house and nothing else, and the longer they spoke about themselves, the worse I felt because, like a fool, I'd let them in expecting an apology, or at least I had expected them to acknowledge that they had screwed up. Apparently, the house was in really bad condition. None of the amenities were in working condition. There were a lot of bats and bird droppings all over the floors. Several mice and other animals had made their home in the house, and worst of all, there seemed to be a serious termite problem. Everything was really dirty, and it was very obvious that nobody had been taking care of the house in the absence of the owner, her ex. So that was part of the reason why they couldn't move in just now, and even for the 2 weeks that they had spent there, they had had to live with Allison's parents. The only reason they did not come back after the first night itself was because they were speaking to the lawyer and trying to find out whether they would be able to get ownership of the house before, and unfortunately, there was no clause for that in the will. And until then, the lawyer was going to handle the trust for her, and only after Hannah turned 18 was she going to legally get the ownership of the house, and then she would be able to move in whenever she wanted to. For 2 weeks, discussions had been going on between Allison and the lawyer because she wanted to move in as soon as possible, preferably by the end of this year, but that was just a few months ago, and so far, even the will itself was under probate, and that's why they had decided to come back home because clearly, it was not the right time for them to move in. After they explained all of this to me, I told Allison that it was nice that she finally had a place to live because as of now, I was no longer interested in living with her anymore. I told her that she had been really hurtful and disrespectful towards me and my feelings, and she hadn't even bothered to apologize for any of it. So I wanted her to leave. She was shocked when I said that and told Hannah to go to her room so we could speak in person. And once we were alone, I told her that I had only let her and Hannah in because I was expecting them to apologize. I could still excuse Hannah because she was just a kid, but Allison was a grown woman, and she knew what she was doing. The only reason she had bothered to come back to me was because the house was not livable right now. If the house had been in good condition, she would not have bothered to come back to me, and we would probably be getting divorced right now because I wouldn't change my mind about moving, and from the looks of it, it was pretty apparent that she wouldn't either. So now, keeping that in mind, I thought that it was better for us to part ways right now than wait for the future and go our separate ways eventually. She started yelling at me immediately when I said that and told me that I was being unreasonable and stupid. She told me that I was the one who wanted to divorce and I was ready to give up on our marriage and relationship over something so petty, and that meant that I was the one who was not serious about us. Once again, she brought up how she had spent so many years living with me, close to my family and friends, and the least that she could expect from me was to spend at least some time in her hometown with her family and friends so she could be close to them, but I had let her down and that was really selfish of me. And now, because they refused to be apologetic for something that was not even their fault, I was threatening to leave her and kick her out. I tried to argue with her, but she was not having any of it, and she just kept on screaming at me. She called me a horrible human being for not understanding her feelings and then pretending like she was the villain here, and even said that I was a crybaby because if I couldn't even man up and be there for my wife and daughter, then that's what I deserve to be called. Lastly, she told me that if I really wanted her and Hannah to be out of my life, then they would gladly leave, but she just wanted me to know that the way I was behaving was really cowardly and selfish because, of course, I declined to move to her hometown with her even though she had stayed here in my city for a really long time. But I don't think that's the same thing at all. But it was very cowardly because apparently she believes that I should have been there for her and Hannah, but I was so caught up in my feelings that I didn't even care about theirs, and just because I couldn't handle the fact that they had different opinions, I was trying to make them look like the villains and myself the victim. She already had her bags packed when she had come back, so all she had to do was grab Hannah and then the two of them left. I didn't have the heart to contact them after that, but I know that they are staying with a friend of hers right now. Her friend contacted me to let me know that they were there and that both of them were really irked at me, so if I wanted to make things out, I had better do it quickly. 2 days have passed since then, and I haven't been able to do anything quickly because I just don't even know what to do. Update 1. Okay, so I went through the comments, and thank you so much to everyone who took the time to leave a comment and give me some advice. After reading these comments, I decided that I was going to take some more time to think about what I really wanted to do because whatever I said in my previous post was all true. If the house had been in a better condition and they had been able to work something out legally, I don't think that Allison and Hannah would have come back to me, and that's what's really been bugging me. The fact that they wouldn't have come back to me if things had been perfect in another place. I don't want to be a backup option for them, if that makes sense. And obviously, I'm not holding anything against Hannah. She's just a kid. I've watched her grow up for the past couple of years, and she still has a lot of growing up to do, so I'm not mad at her in the slightest. But with Allison, that's a different story. She's a grown woman, and right now I don't really know what to make of her. She thinks that I am blaming her and making her out to be the bad guy, but I think that she's doing the same thing to me, and I feel like she's gaslighting me into believing that I'm the villain here. She's constantly been invalidating my feelings, and the fact that she called me a crybaby and a selfish person and a coward and whatnot, it's just been really hard to deal with all of this on my own. I don't really understand how to deal with the situation, and I do feel sorry for all of us right now because for the past couple of years we had been one happy family, but right now I can feel that family breaking apart. It's not like I wanted it to happen, but it's not like I have a choice in this either. She disrespected me, and if she comes back and genuinely apologizes to me for everything, I'm ready to make it work. I really love her and I genuinely care for her, and I'd do anything to bring this relationship back on track again. But she has to take the initiative and at least try to let me know that she still cares as well. From the looks of it, it doesn't really feel like that. Just like what happened when she had left initially. She hasn't contacted me at all and is pretending like I don't even exist. The last message that I have from her is from over 2 weeks ago before any of this even started. And after that, neither she nor Hannah has spoken to me. So I don't know what to do anymore. I want to make it work, but she has to want the same thing as well. Until then, we're just going to be stuck here. Update 2. So it's been a week since my last update. This afternoon, Allison and Hannah came back again. Once again, I was foolish enough to expect that they were probably here to make things right with me. But when I opened the door, Allison told me that they were only here to pack the remaining things that they had left here. They had even brought along a pickup truck and a friend to help them pack, so I knew that they were serious. I was really upset because I just kept waiting for Allison to talk to me, to at least give me a sign that maybe things were not as bad as we thought and we could still fix our marriage. But instead, she was ready to give up so easily. And so I decided to speak to her in private, and I told her that I was really disappointed by the way she was dealing with things. We had spent quite a few years together, and I thought that we were stronger than this, and I couldn't understand her behavior. She just sounded very resigned when she spoke to me, and she told me that she was sick of fighting with me as well, and it was not like it brought her any joy to be leaving me like this, but she also believed that I owed her an apology. And I knew that if I tried to argue with her on that, we would get stuck in the loop again and end up talking in circles because she believed that I owe her an apology for not being there for her, and I believed the same thing but for her. So instead of going down that road again, I told her that whatever had happened was done now, and the only thing that we could do was at least try to move on. But we owed it to each other to give our relationship another chance, and a real fighting chance at that. I thought that she was going to agree, but instead, she told me that she was very disappointed that things had turned out to be like this. But after everything that happened, she didn't think that giving our relationship a chance would work out because ultimately, she wanted to move back to her hometown and be with her family and friends. She was sick of living here, and in a couple of months she was planning on moving back, so it wasn't just about the house. She actually planned on going back, and the house has just been a catalyst for her decision. I'll have to admit that caught me off guard because I had really assumed that it was going to be about the house and not about wanting to move back. I couldn't promise her anything either because I didn't know if I was ready to move to her hometown with her, and I didn't know if I would ever be ready for it. So when she told me that this was the real reason, she hadn't bothered to reach out to me in the past couple of weeks because staying with her parents for those 2 weeks had made her feel like she had been missing out on a lot of time with them, and she wanted to be closer to them, and she knew that I wouldn't want to move back with her. She had fought with me. She had ended up trying to hate me, but she couldn't bring herself to do that because she knew that even I had a point. If I'm being honest, I honestly just believed that she wanted to move back because of the house and it was just a phase, but hearing her confess that she actually wanted to move back because she wanted to be close to everything that she knew, it made me feel like maybe I misunderstood her and it was not just a spur-of-the-moment impulsive decision. I honestly believed that we would end up fighting again, but when she spoke to me about it, I really tried to understand where she was coming from because I was sick of fighting with her as well, and I didn't think there was any point in arguing with her again and again. That was just going to hurt both of us. She even asked me if I would be willing to consider moving back with her, and I told her that I would need some time to think about it because so far, I had been under the impression that maybe this was something that I could talk her out of doing, but obviously that was not the case. When I said that, she told me that she understood and that I was free to take all the time that I needed, but eventually we would have to decide what we wanted to do. Then she returned to packing, and all I could do was just sit quietly and try to process what was going on. Even when she was leaving, she told me that I still had time to think about what I wanted, but she was not going to change her mind, and if I couldn't deal with it, she would be fine with that as well. It was a lot today, and I found myself wishing that I hadn't opened the door to let them in because otherwise, I wouldn't have found out about any of this, and I think being angry at her was much easier than trying to understand and cope with this situation. But anyway, now that I know what's going on for sure, I have to think about what I want, and I have to think about what my priorities are. It's been messing with my head, but I know that I'll have to come to a decision eventually, and it's going to be hard no matter what I decide. I'll be the one having to make some sacrifices, and regardless of what I sacrifice, it's still going to hurt me. So, needless to say, I'm in a very complicated situation right now, and my position is not easy since I have all of my family, my friends, and even my work here. I know that I'm rambling, but I honestly don't know what to make of this situation anymore. Update 3. So, after thinking about everything for 3 weeks, I finally reached out to Allison and told her that I would not be moving back to her hometown with her. It was not an easy decision for me by any means, but I had to do what was best for me, and like I said in my last update, all my friends, all my family, and even my work are here, and I can't sacrifice everything. Even if I tried to come back every weekend here, I still couldn't think of a way I could make it work with my business, and I have dedicated quite a bit of my life to building this business from the ground up. I have a lot of employees who are relying on me, so I can't just hand it over to somebody else. I can't sell it to somebody and just move. So, with a heavy heart, I had to decide against staying married to Allison because she deserves the freedom to live her life the way she wants to, and so do I. When I told her about my decision after 3 weeks of no contact, she seemed disappointed but did not fight with me. She told me that she understood and that she wished me all the best for the future, but she hoped that I would forgive her and understand where she was coming from as well. And I really do. It must not have been easy for her to live away from her family for so long, but the only reason she had left her hometown in the first place was because she wanted to make a life for herself away from everything that she knew, away from her comfort zone. She wanted some independence and freedom, and she had already got that, but now we were both at an age where we wanted comfort, and it was natural for her to want to return to her comfort zone. We spoke about it and decided that we were going to file for divorce on mutual grounds and end this marriage amicably. But before that, we had to think about what we wanted to arrange for Hannah because she had apparently been very upset about having to leave me behind. So far, Allison had told her not to contact me because she was not sure about what I wanted, but now she asked me, and I told her that I would love to have partial custody or at least visiting rights because Hannah is somebody that I watched grow up for the past couple of years, and I would really like to have her in my life. With Allison, I can't help the situation right now, but I don't want to let go of Hannah as well since I'm quite attached to her, and I think of her as my own daughter. I hadn't reached out to her so far because I didn't think it would be appropriate without speaking to Allison first. But now that both of us are on the same page, we are going to think about what to do. And before that, I'm finally going to meet Hannah after a really long time now. Update 4. So, hi. I just came back after meeting Hannah and Allison, and my heart is so full right now. I posted my last update 3 days back, and since then, I had just been trying to focus and process the fact that I was going to get a divorce and Allison was no longer going to be a part of my life. I thought that I had accepted it, but the more that I thought about it, the more I regretted it. I guess speaking to her about it just made it very real, but I couldn't go back on my word, so I had to just suck it up and prepare myself mentally to see her. But the second that I walked into her friend's apartment where she had been staying, I kind of broke down, and so did she, and I realized that this was the reason that we had been staying away from each other because we knew that the second we saw each other, we wouldn't be able to hold back because no matter how much I wanted to resent her, I couldn't because I still loved her. And I guess so did she because as soon as we saw each other, we ended up crying and hugging each other because it had been so long since we last met one another. She instantly told me that she had made up her mind that she was going to move back to her hometown to be closer to her friends and family and her old life. But now she wasn't so sure anymore. I was so glad to hear it because finally, we were on the same page, and she had been there to take the initiative to say it to me. After a lot of tears and hugging and making up, we decided that we were going to put all our plans on hold and just go for marriage counseling. If there was still a chance that we could sort out our differences and make this marriage work, I wanted to take that chance. I'd actually only gone over to meet Hannah, but I'm glad that I was able to sort things out with Allison as well. She is still staying with her friend, but she will be all packed up and ready to move back tomorrow, and I can't wait for her to come back. Hannah, obviously, is thrilled that we are not separating and has decided to give our marriage a second chance. But of course, we can't overlook the fact that all of this had stemmed from the fact that Allison had been feeling very distanced from her family, and so we have decided that we are going to try and see them every weekend and not once every 2 months. We are not going to make excuses for ourselves, and even though we are really busy with work and stuff, we need to make time for the ones that we love, and that's a lesson that we have had to learn the hard way. Anyway, I'm just really happy that we are going to try and make it work because I really love her, and it's very soothing for me to know that it's the same for her as well. Hopefully, counseling is going to make everything better. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I raised my wife's children as my own, but when they disrespected me, I stopped providing and left. Am I the a-hole? I've always believed in a few fundamental principles. Working hard for what you have, accepting responsibility for your actions, and remaining loyal to those you care about. I also learned the hard way that loving the wrong people can lead to serious problems. This entire story is about how my views were put to the test and how everything I thought I understood about family came crumbling down. To be honest, this isn't a happy story. It's about being taken advantage of, being exploited, and finally recognizing when enough is enough. I am not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened because I believe it's vital to be honest about these things. We often hear of happy endings, but sometimes the ending is simply an ending, and sometimes that's fine. It is actually necessary. I'm not trying to be a saint here. I made mistakes. I was perhaps very trusting and inclined to believe in the best in others. I ignored certain red signs and paid the consequences. However, I also learned a lot. So, how did it all begin? It began with a woman named Amelia. She was widowed. Her husband, a military officer, had died. She had 2 young children, a boy named Daniel, who was about 4 years old and full of energy, and a baby girl named Mia, who was just learning to walk. I met them through a mutual friend, and I could tell immediately away that Amelia was struggling. She wasn't just sad, though she certainly was. It was more than that. She was totally fatigued. Visibly weary. You could see it in the way she held herself, the dark circles under her eyes, and the way she appeared to be running on fumes. It wasn't just "I'm tired" tiredness. It was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion caused by carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. I didn't intervene because I felt obligated or anything. It was not some sort of knight in shining armor complex. It was only that I actually saw her. I observed her struggle and wanted to help. I wanted to make things a little simpler for her and the children. I had a genuine desire to provide some stability and support in their lives. I began by helping out in small ways, such as offering to keep the kids so she could take a nap or running errands. However, it quickly became more. I found myself yearning to be a father figure for those children. Their father had passed away, and I felt confident that I could fill in for him. Not to replace him, of course, but to provide them with the love and support that every child needs. I suppose you could say I was contrasting my own values, hard labor, responsibility, and loyalty, with the circumstances they were in. I wanted to give them what their father couldn't, not because I had to, but because I really wanted to. Felt right. Felt like the beginning of something positive, something real. And for a long time, it was okay. I poured myself into it. I worked long hours not only to pay the bills, but also to ensure that those children had everything they required. A decent school, great clothes, a pleasant home, lots of food on the table. All of it. I prioritized their needs before my own. I wasn't simply attempting to meet their basic needs. I also wanted to alleviate any sense of loss they may have had because their father was not present. I wanted to fill the vacuum and make them feel safe and cherished. It wasn't all about the material goods, however. I was also there for them emotionally. I attended every single school event, soccer game, and play. I cheered the loudest. I was their biggest fan. I planned birthday parties, family vacations, and did all of the dad things. They answered. They loved me back. They addressed me as Dad, rather than Thomas. And you know what? I believed it. I actually did. I felt like I was the luckiest man alive. I believed I had established a genuine, loving family. I was so caught up in the idea, in the desire for it to be true, that I failed to notice the cracks that were beginning to appear. I was so intent on creating the perfect photo that I ignored the warning indications. Looking back, I realized that I was building on a foundation that was not as firm as I had assumed. But at the moment, I was fully committed. I invested my heart and soul. I was determined to make this work and be the greatest father figure I could be. I put everything I had into it, and for a while it appeared to be paying off. We had rituals, conventions, and inside jokes. We were a family. I felt confident that emotion was what kept me going. The initial signals of problems were minor, almost insignificant. A few comments from the youngsters, some backtalk, and a roll of the eyes here and there. Nothing significant, nothing unusual for children growing up. I brushed it off. I told myself that was just standard teenage behavior, a phase they were passing through. I didn't want to perceive it as more than that. I recall Daniel, he must have been around 13 or 14, making a nasty remark about how I wasn't cool because I wouldn't let him stay out late. Mia, who was a few years younger, responded with a similarly nasty remark. Stung a little, but I laughed it off. I told myself they were only testing boundaries and pushing limits, as all teens do. As the children grew older, the disdain became more obvious. By the age of 17, Daniel had become a full-fledged teenager. He began ignoring curfews, dismissing any advice I offered, and generally acting as if he was entitled to do whatever he wanted. It was typical teenage rebellion, but it felt different, sharper somehow. There was a meanness that I couldn't ignore. Mia, who was around 14 at the time, began copying her brother's conduct. She would roll her eyes at me, ignore my orders, and dismiss any worries I expressed. They established a united front against me, demonstrating that they did not respect my authority or me for that matter. Felt like they were ganging up on me, seeing how far they could push me. Amelia's reply, or lack thereof, exacerbated the situation. She declined to intervene. She would not back me up. She'd just sit there, generally looking at her phone, pretending not to notice what was going on. Sometimes she would even gently undermine me. Maybe she'd appear to be distracted by her phone, or sigh as if I was being unreasonable. It wasn't simply passive. She seemed to actively encourage their actions. She'd make excuses for them. Oh, they're just tired. Or they're going through a phase. Or we need to keep the peace. There was always something. However, it was actually a pattern of supporting their disdain. She was allowing them to get away with it, undermining my authority, and making me feel more lonely. I started to feel like I was the only one who cared about setting boundaries and teaching them what was right and wrong. I began to mistrust Amelia's motives. Was she truly this oblivious? Or was she purposely undermining me? I received my first true wake-up call about this time, but I still didn't completely understand what was going on. The true breaking point, when everything began to fall apart, occurred one night. Daniel arrived home much beyond his curfew. I'm talking hours later, and he hadn't called, texted, or anything. I was scared sick, of course, but when he eventually walked in, he acted as if it was nothing. I asked him calmly where he had been, just a simple question to ensure accountability. He did not even look at me. He simply stated, "Relax, I'm not a kid." That was it. There was no apology or explanation, just a flippant brush off. And then he shouted, "You're not my real dad. Stop acting like you own me." All those years of love, care, and support were flung back in my face. Felt like a punch in the belly. Mia, who was standing there, chipped in, "Yeah, you're just some guy mom married," as if all the years we'd spent together and the experiences we'd shared were meaningless. Something inside me had just broken. It wasn't anger, not yet, but rather a deep sense of disillusionment. And the worst part? Amelia did not say anything. She just stood there silently. Her silence represented the ultimate betrayal. It proved all I had suspected, that I was nothing more than a convenience to them, a provider, someone to handle the things their true father couldn't. It was the defining moment for me when I learned that the family I believed I had created was a fix. It was not long after the first episode that it occurred again. This time it was Mia. She had made a mess in the kitchen, so I asked her to clean it up. Simple enough, right? Basic responsibilities. But instead, she simply looked at me and said, "Why don't you do it? It's your house, isn't it?" That stung. It wasn't just the contempt. It was how she said it, as if I were a servant whose sole function was to clean up after them. It accentuated my outsider status, reducing me to little more than a provider and cleaner. It was an intentional attempt to make me feel insignificant. And then, as if on cue, Daniel added the identical line, "You're not even our real dad." It was as if they were tag-teaming me, reaffirming their rejection and ensuring I understood my place or lack thereof in their lives. But this time, Amelia's reply sealed the deal. She didn't yell or become irritated. She just looked at me nonchalantly, not glancing up from her phone, and remarked, "They have a point, Thomas. Maybe you should back off." That was all. That was the moment I realized it was finished. It was no longer just the children's disdain. Amelia had explicitly agreed with them. She was siding with them against me, the guy who had spent years caring for them. It wasn't a moment of rage or even pain, not really. It was a moment of clarity. I eventually realized I was finished. There was no going back. This was not a family. It was a fake, and I was finally ready to leave. It was a gentle epiphany, a peaceful acceptance of the fact. I was no longer striving to hang on to something that was not genuine. I was ready to let go. So, I did something I never imagined I would do. I paused. I stopped giving, caring, and trying. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a calculated, thoughtful one. I just withdrew. I stopped providing for them. No more rides, allowances, protection, guidance, or worry. I let them face the repercussions of their behavior. It was a total 180 from the way I had been for years. I was always there for them, no matter what. Now I was gone. I'm not gonna lie, it stung. Contradicted every instinct I had. I had committed so much of myself in this family, and it was really terrible to simply walk away. But I knew it was important. I needed to defend myself. I knew it would not be easy. I knew they would react and try to push back. But I was prepared for it. I'd hit my limit. I gave them everything I had, and they threw it back at me. I was finished being the doormat. First, they laughed. They insulted me, made caustic remarks, and smirked whenever I passed by. They believed they had won. They assumed they didn't need me. They were relying on Amelia to deliver all I was providing. They were wrong. They'd make these tiny jabs, copying my directions and mocking the way I tried to set boundaries. They'd exclaim, "Oh, are we breaking the rules?" while rolling their eyes and smirking at each other. It was as if they were attempting to provoke me, to elicit a reaction from me. Oh, Amelia made sure to pick up my slack. She paid for their small shopping trips and ensured that their weekends were still full with fast food and excessive spending. She kept them comfortable, smug, and convinced them they didn't need me. But I knew it would not last. I knew Amelia had few resources. She did not have the same salary as I did. She couldn't keep up that kind of spending indefinitely. So I stayed quiet. I let them have fun. I let them think they could get away with it. I knew the reality check was coming. I didn't participate. I did not argue. I did not react. I simply observed, calmly waiting for the inevitable. It was a strange kind of patience, formed by the conviction that I was correct. I knew their confidence was based on a flimsy foundation that would soon disintegrate. I simply had to wait it out. It was a waiting game. Then, gradually but certainly, things began to alter. Shopping outings became less regular. Fast food trips became fewer and farther between. New garments have ceased emerging. Small changes at first, but visible. Then, more problems began to surface. School expenses became an issue. Daniel got into some difficulty at school, and Amelia wasn't sure how to handle it. Mia smashed her phone and had no money to repair it. I remember the first time Daniel missed his school transportation. He'd always taken it for granted, rarely trying to express gratitude. Now he was alone. He had to run for the bus. And from what I've heard, he barely made it, huffing and puffing, absolutely out of breath. It's a minor detail, but it was symbolic. It was the first noticeable break in their comfy world, and I'll confess it, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Not joy precisely, but a quiet vindication. I knew what it was like to strive and work for everything you had. I recall when I was younger and had to work hard to make ends meet. They, on the other hand, have always received everything naturally. I said nothing. I just watched. I could see Mia's frustration when she learned her broken phone would not be magically replaced. I overheard her complain to Amelia, as well as Amelia's increasingly feeble justifications. She was running out of money and realized she couldn't offer everything I had. That following day, Mia had a major breakdown, complaining about how unfair it was that she couldn't have her phone repaired. Amelia finally stated, just above a whisper, that she didn't have the money right now. It was a minor admission, but a crucial one. It was the first time she had openly acknowledged her limited resources. It was the beginning of the end for their denial. The truth of their situation began to seep in. They were beginning to realize that their privileged existence was dependent on me, the person they had so easily discarded and despised. The free ride was ended, and they were beginning to feel the bumps in the road. It was a brutal but necessary awakening. My absence was making itself felt. Not long after the phone incident, Amelia confronted me. Of course, she was upset. She accused me of being childish and disregarding my obligations. That word, responsibilities, stayed with me. It indicated how she saw me. Not as a partner, not as a father figure, but as someone with commitments to meet, a provider, a walking ATM. She kept blaming me for everything that was going wrong. She felt I was abandoning them, being selfish and not acting like a man. She tried to make me feel guilty, as if I were the terrible guy. It was all a projection, of course. She was projecting her own failings onto me. I let her rant. I let her say everything, and when she paused for breath, I asked her a simple question. I questioned her why she had never defended me and why she had always supported the children, even when they were disrespectful. I questioned her why she had let them treat me the way they did. And that is when it happened. That's when the truth eventually emerged. She sneered, and I mean sneered, and said, "Because I agree with them, Thomas. You were never really their father." It felt like a slap in the face, but it also confirmed everything I had assumed. But it did not end there. She went further. She actually stated that she had warned the kids not to let me manage them. "I told them not to let you control them," she claimed. "I raised them alone before you, and I can do it again. That was the real kicker. It was not simply passive passivity. It was deliberate, long-term undermining. She had intentionally promoted their disdain and poisoned their minds against me. Daniel and Mia were standing in the corridor, arms crossed, with smug expressions on their faces. It seemed like they were enjoying the show. At that point, I thought, this is it. This is who they really are. Not the sweet, innocent children I had tried to love and care for, but spoiled, entitled brats, enabled by their manipulative mother. Despite the hurt and betrayal, I felt relieved. It was over. The charade was over. I had an answer. There was no ambiguity and no space for doubt. I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision by walking away. The reality was unpleasant, but also liberating. I was finally free, but things worsened before they improved. Amelia's rage, combined with their own sense of entitlement, drove the kids to act out even more. It began with tiny things. My personal possessions would disappear. Then, some crucial work files vanished from my computer. I began to suspect they were teasing me, but I had no proof. The situation then escalated. One morning, I discovered my car had been keyed, a long, deep mark along the side. That's when I realized I needed to do something. I discreetly installed security cameras inside and outside the home. I didn't tell anyone, including Amelia. I only wanted to gather proof, and I succeeded. A few days later, I caught Daniel and Mia on video in my closet. They were laughing, ripping up my garments, and destroying them with scissors. It was purposeful vandalism. I did not challenge them. I did not yell or scream. I just stayed quiet. I documented everything. I saved the video clip. I took pictures of the damage. I gathered all of the menacing texts they'd sent me, evidence of their growing anger. I was playing along, letting them believe they were winning, while secretly planning my departure. I realized I had to defend myself, not just emotionally, but legally. I knew things were going to get bad, so I wanted to be prepared. I was preparing my case, accumulating the ammunition I'd need to fight back if necessary. It was a sad and pathetic scenario, but I was resolved to handle it with as much respect and calm as I could. I was not going to come down to their level. I was going to be smart, strategic, and quiet. The next step was to see a lawyer. I described the problem and showed him all of the proof I had obtained. He listened quietly, nodding occasionally, and when I finished, he told me I had a solid case. We discussed divorce, and he even offered a restraining order due to the children's growing animosity. I also filed a police report regarding the property damage. It felt strange to report my stepchildren to the police, but I knew it was necessary. I needed to keep an official record of their actions to protect myself from any accusations or legal challenges. It was another step in the process of breaking relationships and freeing myself from this toxic environment. Then, one afternoon, while Amelia and the children were gone, I packed a bag. I didn't take much, just the necessities, the things that were most important to me. I left everything else behind, including the furniture, appliances, and material possessions I had accumulated over the years. They weren't important. What was crucial was my freedom and peace of mind. I left an envelope on the kitchen countertop. The divorce papers were inside, along with copies of all supporting documentation, such as the police report, images of the damage, and screenshots of the threatening texts. It was a formal act of separation. There was no going back. I went out of the house and did not look back. I got into my car, the one with the long scrape on the side, and drove away. I didn't have a plan, really. I just knew I needed to get out of the toxic environment I was living in. The last phase was financial. I stopped all joint accounts and denied Amelia access to my assets. It was a harsh move, I admit, but it was necessary. I had to limit her capacity to continue enabling the children's entitled behavior. I needed to make it apparent that the gravy train had halted. It was the final cut of ties, the ultimate act of departure. It was over. Amelia reacted as one could have imagined. She contacted me several times, leaving furious voicemails, accusing me of being a coward, abandoning them, and being a bad person. She claimed she could live without me, that she didn't want my money, and that she would be better off without me. It was just bluster, of course. She was in denial and refused to acknowledge the reality of the situation. I did not return her calls. I did not react to her texts. I just blocked her number. I declined to engage in additional dispute. I had spoken my piece. I'd taken my stand, and I was finished. I needed to focus on my own well-being and create a new life for myself. Then the children began messaging me. At first, they sent the same careless, arrogant messages they had always sent. But the tone gradually shifted. They began to sound apprehensive and even sorry. They apologized for their actions, admitting that things were challenging and that they were struggling without my help. Finally, I got a message from Mia, the younger one. It was only 3 words. "I miss you." It was a big change, but it was too late. The damage was done. The trust was broken. I couldn't return even if I wanted to. I stayed mute. I did not respond. I recognized their regret, but I remained solid in my decision. I'd learned a harsh lesson and was determined not to make the same mistakes again. I gave them everything I had, and they threw it back at me. I was finished. My silence was my response. It was my way of saying, "You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." So that is my story. It's not pretty, but it's genuine, and it taught me some essential things. The most important rule is to never allow others to take you for granted. Never beg for respect. Never waste your energy on individuals who do not appreciate you. And if you feel used or insulted, move away. Do not hesitate. Do not look back. It's a difficult lesson to learn, and even more difficult to apply, but it's necessary for your own well-being and self-respect. You deserve to be treated with kindness, respect, and love, and if you don't get it, you have the right or obligation to walk away. Some individuals only recognize your worth after you're gone, and by then, it's too late. It's a terrible truth, but it is nonetheless a truth. Do not wait for them to recognize your worth. Know your worth and act appropriately. It is not about selfishness. It is about self-awareness. It is about protecting your heart, mind, and soul. Thank you for reading. I hope my story can help someone out there who is going through something similar. Remember that you are not alone, and you deserve to be happy. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Choose yourself. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I'm tired of my sister-in-law, and I even plan to not go to my brother's wedding because of her weird behavior. My 27 brother, 25, is marrying Lena, 24Y. She doesn't have a family, so my family tried to make her feel really included. I liked her the few times I saw her until she started to get weird. I live 5 hours away from my family because I worked as Rita's 98F personal nurse, so I lived with her, and I'm studying another degree, so I don't really have too much free time. The first time I met Lena, almost 2 years ago, she came up to me saying that everyone in the family always talks about me or asks for me in every family reunion, and she wanted to meet me. I made a little talk with her, and then I went to talk with my aunts. The rest of the night, whenever I was talking to a member of my family, Lena would get into the conversation, even if it was private. I assumed she was trying to fit in and include herself, so I included her in the conversations, even though I found it uncomfortable. After that, she included herself all the time in any conversation I was having with anyone at any family gathering, but I would include her in the conversations. The problem started when they announced their engagement. They were going to announce it at a party, but before they announced it, I had to leave the place urgently because Rita had fallen out of the bathtub. My brother understood the urgency, and he took me to a room, just the two of us, to still tell me the news of his engagement before I leave. I congratulated and hugged him, but Lena ruined our moment because she complained, saying that the firstborn of the family, me, must be there. But I just ignored her, and my brother explained to her that I had to leave. I have been taking care of Rita since before I graduated, and she always trusted in my skills as a nurse. She's even paying for my second degree, which is a lot, so she became a third grandmother to me. And after falling in the bathroom, she broke her hip, and her health deteriorated greatly. It's just me and her pregnant great-grandchild who takes care of her. My mother also comes to the hospital to help me sometimes because Rita doesn't like to be touched by the hospital nurses. She hates when strangers touch her for some traumas from her childhood. A few months ago, Lena went out with the women of the family to try on wedding dresses, and one of my cousins told me that Lena kept complaining because I didn't go with them. Rita was sick and I was taking care of her. Lena knew that. On my mother's birthday, I invited her for a brunch. It was supposed to be a mother and daughter outing like we do every year, but Lena insisted on coming. My mother felt uncomfortable, but we included her in our brunch anyways. I can tell a lot of situations like that where Lena pushed herself too hard to get close to me, even if I was always kind with her. She even had an argument with a cousin because of that. I reached my limit yesterday. Rita passed away 3 days ago, and not only am I really sad, but also my parents and brothers since everyone knew her and she was a great woman. Rita wants us to bury her ashes in the cottage where she grew up. Rita's great-granddaughter surprised me with an arranged trip for the two of us to go and bury the ashes next week. I told my family that, and my mother said she wants to go too. But Lena got totally mad and started to complain, saying that we're going to a trip 2 days before the wedding. To be honest, I totally forgot about it and I don't feel with the energy to go. My mother explained that we will only go to bury the ashes and come back literally the night before the wedding day and that everything is actually ready. Lena continued complaining, and I snapped when she told me that I care more about an old lady who wasn't my family and that I should care a lot more about her, since she'll be my real family, my brother's wife and my niece's and nephew's mother, and the dead woman wasn't even my blood. I told Lena that Rita was like family to me and that she's not even a friend to me, that she's not relevant in my life, and if it wasn't for my brother, I wouldn't even try to get along with her. Maybe I was mean, but I was sad and angry. I left the place while Lena was trying to argue with me, and she started to cry, saying that she only wanted to be family for me. I always wanted to make her feel included, but she crossed my boundaries and doesn't have empathy at all. She didn't even give me condolences when Rita passed away and kept talking about the wedding all day while I made calls to take care of the funeral. Now I'm thinking that I don't even want to go to the wedding. I love my brother, and he even chose my bridesmaid dress, but I feel too bad to go. And I'm even thinking of cutting off contact with Lena because her behavior is too weird and dense. I'm just sad. And I want to cry all day because I lost the woman I considered my guide for 5 years for her wisdom. And I feel guilty for not wanting to go to my brother's wedding and make him feel sad. But I just don't want to deal with Lena anymore because next time I see her, I know I will surely fight with her if she makes another comment like that. Now for some comments. Comment 1. If Lena knew what having healthy relationships looked like, she should have talked with OP privately on why OP wasn't invested into having family times. OP. She already had an argument with one of my cousins who tried to explain to her that I have a busy life and I can't go out too often to my parents' house. But Lena just complained that I don't care about the family and started to talk ill about me, to which my cousin got angry with her. Also, my mother, who never liked physical contact, asked Lena to please not hug her so much because it makes her uncomfortable. Not even her children hug her because she gets tense. But Lena just doesn't listen and keeps hugging her, making my mother feel anxious. We all have a lot of patience with her, and we understand that she never had a family, but there comes a point when patience runs out. She doesn't even listen to my brother, and I can't live because of her behavior. Her behavior not only distances her from me but also from the rest of the family, and we no longer find a way to set a limit and have her understand that there are things that make us feel uncomfortable. We're all really gentle with her. I was too gentle with her, but she just thinks about herself at this point. Comment 2. Is it possible that she has odd notions about what it means to be a good SIL? If she didn't have a family, it's possible she picked up ideas from fiction, and depending on the author, fictional relationships can be downright odd. Ask her if she thinks she's being polite by inserting herself into private conversations, trying to be part of every single thing, etc. She may be doing her damnedest to be good to you and is being damned for it, but also she needs her framework of what is appropriate adjusted by you setting boundaries of what makes for a good relationship. She might even welcome explicit descriptions of what a healthy relationship looks like. OP. I think she has a weird vision of what a family should be. Although what confuses me is that while she tries to force a good relationship with me, she doesn't mind talking badly about me behind my back. So I don't really understand what she really wants. She always emphasizes that I'm the firstborn, so I should be in all the family stuff because it's my responsibility, and I have no idea where she got that idea or concept from. At first, I thought that she wants a family like the ones in the movies, but her behavior becomes hostile to me behind my back. And I don't know if she does that to other family members as well, because the only person who tried to explain the boundaries in a serious way was my cousin, and they ended up having a strong argument because Lena is too stubborn. So I don't understand what she wants, and I'm just tired. Date 1. First of all, I'm grateful to those who gave me good advice, even though others left weird comments and hadn't even read the post before leaving a comment. I want to clarify again that I always tried to make Lena feel welcome, and I always understood that she never had a family. But do I deserve to be treated without empathy? Why should I overflow with empathy for her when she never showed empathy for me? I'm grieving and can't even have peace right now because of her. I also got comments saying that I should treat her like a toddler, but that's just rude. She's a grown woman and should be treated like what she is. I think it would be insulting to treat her like a child. I talked to my parents about everything and also to my brothers. In the conversation, I discovered things that Lena did and said that are even more weird. My mother said that Lena often makes comments like, "I'm more of a daughter to you than Op since she never visits you and I come all the time," which makes my mother uncomfortable. She also said that she explained a lot of times to Lena that she doesn't like physical touch, not even us hug her because she gets anxious and tense, but Lena just keeps hugging her. My mother also said that Lena speaks very badly of me, and Lena even said that I cried more because of Rita's death than I did because of my real grandfather's death, which is something really shitty to say. My father said that a year ago, Lena approached him just to say, "Your second daughter," referring to herself, "knows you better than your first daughter, haha," comparing the gifts we both gave him for Father's Day, and he just laughed it off, but he thought it was a weird comment to make. My father was the only one who always kind of disliked Lena, so now I know why. My younger brother also said that he heard many times how Lena complained about me not going to family gatherings, although she also complained about that in my face a few times. So it seems that we all shut down a lot of things because we wanted to understand her situation and make my brother happy. We live next to a poor neighborhood, and we know a lot of other people in the same situation as Lena, so we tried to make her feel included, but I don't understand her behavior towards me at all at this point. I was crying most of all because I just don't want to deal with this after Rita's death, and I felt bad for my brother. My brother hugged me and said he's sorry and started to tear up, saying that it's difficult for him to deal with Lena's behavior too. He told me that Lena was always making hateful comments towards Rita. She never met Rita, and all of us in the family are sad about her departure because she was a great woman, the kindest woman who ever lived. So it's really sick that she hates an old woman who's dead, and every time my brother tried to explain to her that Rita was important to us, she just gave him a cold shoulder and didn't talk to him for the rest of the day. But he's trying really hard to help her because she always wanted a family. I told him that we want to be her family, but we need to set boundaries because those comments hurt. My father told him that this is just pushing her away from everyone, and he doesn't want someone talking ill about his daughter. My brother looked really tired. He actually looks really tired every day since a few months ago, but I want to think it's because of the wedding. I didn't tell him that I was thinking in cutting contact with Lena because I didn't want it at all to make him feel like he have to choose between her or me. Instead, I told him that we need to set hard boundaries with her so that in the future we can have a healthy coexistence and she can heal her mind because we have been too gentle so far, but the situation is already at its limit. I didn't talk with Lena at all, so I suppose my brother talked with her really seriously. The wedding is still ongoing, and I will go just to show my support to my brother. But at this point, I just feel that he's making a wrong decision because honestly, I don't think Lena is a mentally unstable person. Actually, she's not even a good person in my eyes anymore. But I don't want to say something and be the jealous big sister who ruins his brother's relationship. So I will just stay in silence, letting everything flow. I just want to go on the trip and have some mental peace until the wedding day comes. I don't feel mentally well enough to argue right now or to feel even more guilty because of how I'm dealing with all of this. I just want to bury Rita's ashes with her great-granddaughter and my mother. Sorry for the really bad English, I write almost everything from the translator. Edit. Yes, we tried to put boundaries a lot of times. It's not like we will hit her or be aggressive so she could understand, but I'll admit we've all been too soft and understanding of her out of pity. Lena just doesn't want to understand or listen to others' complaints. Even when someone talks seriously, and the incident she had with me and my cousin only showed that when someone talks to her seriously, she becomes the victim or gets madly angry. Even what my brother said made it clear to us that she's just maybe never going to respect boundaries, so it's better for me to just stop trying and just cut contact with her, at least for this and next week until I feel better and ready to talk about this again. Update 2. My brother already knows everything that Lena did. Like I said in the post, he's also tired of her behavior, but we can't do anything about their relationship if he wants to stay. My father had a conversation with him a few hours ago to tell him that we're worried and if he wants to think better about the wedding, but my brother said that he's fine, only tired, and will continue with the wedding. So yeah, we can't do anything but show my brother that we're with him and try to help him to open his eyes. But people have to understand that we can't help him in an aggressive way, saying that Lena is a bitch or kicking her out of the family, because that will only benefit her, as she can take that opportunity to manipulate my brother by making herself the victim again. Dealing with a person full of traumas and childhood problems is not easy at all. She does not know what basic limits are, and now that she knows them, she does not want to respect them. But we can't be aggressive with her because she's not a mentally well person. Don't blame my brother if you don't understand what it's like to be in a toxic relationship. He's not to blame for anything, and he's just a victim. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Why is he still getting married to this woman, considering this is how she treats his family? Just make sure to support your brother if he ever becomes sane enough to get a divorce. OP. For what he said, she also treats him badly, so I don't understand either. Maybe he's still too in love, but the only thing I can do is show him my support for now. I just don't want to talk with Lena at all because I'm not feeling well mentally. Comment 2. I do think your family might want to gently let him know that they're worried about how he's being treated. He might tell Lena, and then they'll shoot the messenger though. OP, we did it. My mom asked him if it's a toxic relationship, and he just kept quiet and said he just wants to help Lena. He has the same behavior that friends of mine have had when they had toxic partners. And I really know that when people are in abusive relationships, they are usually blinded by love, and they don't want to believe reality. I feel foolish for not noticing that behavior before, but I wasn't around the family too much lately. Comment 3. I don't understand why your family doesn't tell Lena that her negative comments are not welcome. Your family needs to defend you and Rita and stress they do not tolerate disparaging comments. If she has nothing nice to say, there is the door. Bye-bye. Your brother should really postpone the wedding and seek couple counseling. Lena's behavior needs to be adjusted before she can be part of your family. Right now, nobody likes her. OP. Like I said, we all had too much patience with her because of her hard childhood, and we understand that a childhood like she had messes with your head, but I didn't know she was this messed. We told her that those comments are wrong many times, even my brother, but she is not a person with whom you can really talk seriously because she does not listen or gets angry. She has fought strongly with one of my cousins who wanted to put clear limits on her behavior. Our mistake was to not set hard boundaries on her out of pure pity. Even I have let pass many of her comments just because I feel pity for her or because I don't want to hurt my brother, the same reason why my mother tries to not get angry when Lena hugs her. Comment 4. Your family has played nice for the sake of your brother. I get that, but I think it has gotten to the point that you're doing him a disservice. He's going to end up married to this very mentally unwell woman, and his family has just pretended that she's great all along, so he never saw any previous signs that things weren't as great from an outside perspective, and you all still continue to pretend it's not okay. OP, I don't keep pretending that everything is fine. We all talked to my brother that Lena's behavior has to stop. The only thing I didn't tell him is that I plan to cut off contact with Lena to not make him feel pressured or feel like I'm manipulating him. He knows about her behavior, and like I said in the 2 posts, he always tried to correct that behavior and is also tired of that. But I can't do anything if he doesn't want to open his eyes. Now that he knows everything Lena did, it's clear that he knows her behavior is wrong, even towards him. But I can't force him to leave her if he doesn't want to see reality. It's not easy to leave an abusive relationship, even if all the signs are there. Update 3. I think it's been a while since I last posted, and I was feeling too stressed and didn't even log back into this account. As honestly, the comments only managed to stress me out even more, but there are people who keep asking me for an update and worried about all of this mess. Also, sometimes I need to just vent. First of all, I want to make it clear that my brother is an adult. We can advise him, but the final decision is made by him. In my first post, I didn't know anything about what I said in my second post. Please understand that it was a time of stress and anxiety for me to discover all those things that obviously change the perspective you have of someone, and I was in a difficult moment. That being said, the wedding did happen. After another intervention, my father made it clear to my brother that he does not approve the marriage. My father didn't attend the wedding, and since that day, my brother doesn't speak to anyone in the family except my mother. But my mother doesn't want Lena in her house, so it's complicated too. We all gave my brother the reason why getting married with Lena is a bad idea, but he chose to do it anyway. But he's my brother, and I know at some point he'll open his eyes, and he knows he can come to me anytime he needs. For people who will say, "Oh, but you should have done X," or "You should have done Y and your family should stop being doormats and kick Lena out of the house from the start." Honestly, shut up. I think it wasn't enough to clarify that I had my own problems. Everyone in my family has our own problems and lives. We're just trying to be kind and continue the family piece with a person who had a complicated life. My family has always been very healthy, so the least we would believe is that someone my brother is dating has bad intentions. When you grow up in a healthy environment, it is difficult and shocking to deal with problematic people in the family, and it's even more difficult to do something that you know is going to bring serious problems. I personally didn't even see Lena so many times to know all of those weird situations I said in my second post. I can't take charge of a life that isn't mine, and I can't take responsibility for my brother's life or Lena's problems. To reassure everyone, Lena doesn't think about me stealing my identity or anything like that. She's weird, but not dangerous, although what my father told me is strange anyway. My brother confessed to my father that Lena feels like my relationship with my brother is weird, and she feels jealous of me because I'm his favorite person. My brother and I usually lie in the same bed to watch TV, play video games, and he usually hugs me, but it's something I do even with my other brother, but she thinks that's weird. I don't think that's weird at all, and I know many people who is close with their siblings in that way. My brother confessed that he and Lena tend to have a lot of arguments about it. Another thing he hid since Lena gets jealous when he spends time alone with me, but that Lena doesn't understand how siblings treat each other. But at the same time, she also wants to be close to me. According to my brother, she wants to be very close to me, and that's why she doesn't know what comments to make near me and my family. I don't believe him. My father argued with him about it, and he expressed to my brother that he doesn't plan to go to the wedding. I didn't go either and just decided to stay more days away grieving for Rita. So I don't know how it went because my mother avoided the wedding topic. I didn't ask, and I have been living in Rita's house for now. Sorry if this is not the update people wanted, but yeah, that's it. I'm sorry if anyone expected me to say something like that Lena is now in jail for impersonating me or that Lena is actually my long-lost twin sister. The reality is as depressing and simple as everyone predicted of Lena getting my brother mad at all of us and cutting off contact at this point. And now that my mind is calmer, I will just choose to let my brother do his life. I can't put energy on this, and my mother told me to just let him be, and we did everything we could. He's an adult. I don't understand what Lena wants. I don't understand if she hates me or if she likes me or if she wants to be me. I understand that my brother is in a toxic relationship, but still, I can't help but feel hurt. We talked to my brother, trying to convince him not to get married, but at the end of the day, he made his decision. He even confessed many other things about Lena that he lied about and had hidden from us, so for now, I know he's just going to try to protect her all the time. I even talked to Lena before they got married, but it was an argument that went nowhere and only made my brother mad at me for confronting her. But I knew that's what was going to happen the moment I put limits to Lena. The same thing happened to my father and my other brother. You just can't explain the boundaries to her because she doesn't respect them or gets offended. At this point, my mother only has little contact with Lena so that she can continue to have contact with my brother as well. Now for some comments. Comment 1, hugs. You have to look out for yourself and hope your brother knows what he is doing. Lena has issues, but now you don't have to deal with her. Your brother may feel differently in a few months once he is basically cut off from the family. More drama ahead when she has the first grandchild. Lena is a very insecure pick-me person. OP. My brother can't have biological children, and he doesn't want to adopt either because it's really difficult in my country. I doubt very much that they will have children, but I don't know. Comment 2. I remember your first 2 posts. I wonder if Lena has anxious attachment disorder. What is her relationship with her parents and siblings? It seems she wants to be the center of your brother and mother's world. Anything that gets in the way of that is upsetting to her. OP. More than being my mother's center of attention, I think she wants to be just my brother's center of attention. She wants to be my brother's favorite person by being my parents' daughter and his sister, if that makes any sense. I don't know. That's what I deduced from her behavior and what my brother said. She has no relationship with her family because they are addicts. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My brother-in-law, who married my sister, told my wife that he was in love with her. This led to a chain of horrific discoveries in our family. Yesterday, out of the blue, my brother-in-law asked my wife if she could meet him for lunch. He said there was something he needed to talk to her about. When my wife told me about his invitation, she seemed puzzled but not overly concerned. "Do you think it's about my sister?" she asked, furrowing her brow. "Maybe they're having problems and he wants to get a woman's perspective on things." I found the whole situation odd. My brother-in-law had never reached out to my wife in this way before, but he often texted her and other family members for mundane reasons, so I didn't think much of it. After all, we were a close-knit family, and it wasn't unusual for us to support each other through tough times. "Go find out," I told her, shrugging off my initial unease. My wife agreed, deciding to meet him at a cafe near her office the next day. The next morning, as she was getting ready for work, she mentioned lunch again. "I'm still not sure what this is about," she said, a hint of worry in her voice. I reassured her, saying it was probably nothing serious. "Just listen to what he has to say, and if it's something we need to help with, we'll figure it out together," I said. It's a busy cafe, filled with the usual lunchtime crowd, and my wife feels a bit more at ease being in such a public setting. She arrives a bit early, finding a table near the window where she can keep an eye on the entrance. He arrives a few minutes later, looking more nervous than she's ever seen him. They exchanged the usual pleasantries, talking about work and the kids for a few minutes. But then, as soon as their food arrives, he takes a deep breath and dives into what he really came to say. He starts by complimenting her, telling her how beautiful she looks. At first, she thinks he's just being polite, but then he keeps going. He tells her how she's always been the light in his life, how she makes him feel things he's never felt before. "It was love at first sight," he says, his voice trembling slightly. "I've loved you since the moment I first laid eyes on you. If you were mine, I would treat you like the queen you are. I'd give you everything you deserve." My wife is stunned. She stares at him, unable to believe what she's hearing. This man, my brother-in-law, married to my sister and father of their 2 kids, is pouring his heart out to her. He lays it on thick, making grand promises about how different life would be if they were together. He goes on, saying how he's been holding these feelings in for years, how he's watched her and admired her from afar, feeling more and more that they're meant to be together. She tries to interrupt, to tell him he's making a huge mistake, but he keeps talking over her, almost as if he's rehearsed this speech 1,000 times in his head. Mind you, this man has always had a friendly relationship with my wife. Our families see each other often since we're a close-knit bunch. He's always been the fun uncle to our kids, the guy who's there at every family barbecue, every holiday dinner. He does text my wife frequently, but it's always been about mundane things. The kids' schedules, family events, things like that. Nothing overly sexual, nothing that would set off any alarms. In fact, he texts and calls my mom too. They have a friendly rapport, and none of us ever thought anything of it. To us, he's always been just a good guy, someone we trust implicitly. So to hear my wife recount this to me is like a punch to the gut. My wife doesn't let him finish. She stands up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walks out. She's shaking as she calls me, telling me everything that just happened. While she's on the phone with me, the texts from him start. First, it's apologies. He didn't mean it. He thinks it's only infatuation. He's sorry for making her uncomfortable. But the damage is done. She leaves work early to come home and talk to me about this, her phone buzzing incessantly with his calls and messages. I tell her to answer one of his calls, to put him on speaker so I can hear. He's crying, begging her not to tell my sister. He keeps saying it was a mistake, that he misread signals, that he thought she felt the same way. Apparently, when we were together this past weekend, he thought my wife was flirting with him, that they had a moment alone in our kitchen where he felt a connection. My wife is a major ball buster, and I suppose I can see how that can be taken as flirting, but this is beyond anything we could have imagined. He asks if she told me, and I answer yes, as I'm on speaker. Then he starts begging me too, pleading for us to keep this a secret. This went on for a while, him begging and us listening. My main question was whether he had cheated on my sister before. He swore he hadn't, swearing on his kids' lives that it was just my wife. He said I should understand that it was her, only her. At that point, I was done listening. I told him I wasn't going to do anything tonight and that I'd call him tomorrow. Now we're left with this mess, not knowing what to do next. My wife says we should drive over there right now and tell my sister, but the idea of wrecking my sister's family is killing me. Thinking about what this will do to my nieces makes me want to vomit. I know the right thing to do is to tell my sister, but I'm also thinking about my wife. It's not her fault, but there's sure to be resentment from my family. Even if my sister doesn't divorce him and they reconcile, I can't see how we'll ever be together again like we were before, if at all. This whole episode can tear my family apart. I don't give a damn about him, he tried to destroy my family. But I do care about everyone else. Update 1. So everyone that told me last night that I couldn't wait to tell my sister was right. A little after 12, I got a call from my sister. She sounded upset and said she had to tell me something. My heart sank as she explained that her husband, my brother-in-law, had come to her in tears, claiming my wife had tried to begin an affair with him. He spun a tale where my wife was the instigator, tried to shift the blame entirely onto her. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I immediately told my sister that wasn't the case and assured her I would be right over. This situation needed to be addressed face-to-face, not over the phone. I hung up and, with a sense of urgency, called my parents. I woke my mother and father, explaining what was happening in quick, clipped sentences. My father was furious. My mother sounded shocked but resolute. They agreed to head over to my sister's house to sit with her kids, offering the support she would desperately need right now. Next, I called my younger brother. He groggily answered, confusion turning to alarm as I filled him in. He promised to come over to our place and stay with our kids, ensuring they wouldn't be left alone during this turmoil. His calm, steady presence would be a comfort to them. Meanwhile, my wife was already gathering her things, her face pale and drawn. She was dreading the confrontation but knew it was necessary. We left the house in a hurry, the drive to my sister's place feeling longer than it actually was. The silence in the car was heavy, both of us lost in our thoughts. When we arrived, the scene was even more tense than I had imagined. My sister is out on the front porch with my brother-in-law when we get there. He looks beaten, eyes downcast, his posture slumped in defeat. He knows we have the texts and voicemails, the undeniable proof of his betrayal. I really don't know what he was hoping to accomplish by calling my sister in the middle of the night with his lies. Maybe he thought he could get ahead of the story, twist the narrative to save himself. But it was a futile effort. As we walk up to them, the tension in the air is palpable. My wife is trembling, her face a mask of controlled anger and hurt. She hands my sister her phone without a word. My sister takes it, her hands steady, but her eyes burning with a mix of fury and pain. She scrolls through the texts, her expression hardening with each one she reads. Then she listens to the voicemails, the damning evidence of his declarations and her refusals. Before she can say anything, my brother-in-law starts sobbing. This is a man who runs into burning buildings, who faces danger daily without flinching. Seeing him like this, broken and vulnerable, is jarring. His cries are deep and guttural, raw with regret and fear. It's a scene that's almost surreal, a big tough firefighter brought to his knees by his own actions. My sister's face remains impassive, a mask of stern resolve. She's always been tough, but right now she's unyielding. She waits for him to finish, her silence more powerful than any words. When he finally quiets down, still hiccuping with the remnants of his sobs, she speaks. "Pack a bag and go. she says, her voice cold and clear. I can't stand to look at you. He tries to argue, to plead his case, but she's having none of it. Stop it, she snaps, cutting through his words. There's nothing you can say that will make this better. She turns away from him, walks over to my wife, and pulls her into a hug. It's a moment of solidarity between them, a small comfort in the middle of this nightmare. They've been friends since college, and the strength of their bond is evident. It's a relief to see that, despite everything, they're standing together. This leaves me standing with my brother-in-law. He's a wreck, his face red and swollen from crying, his shoulders slumped. He looks at me, his eyes pleading for some kind of understanding or forgiveness, but I have none to offer. He tries to speak, his voice cracking, but I cut him off. You need to leave, I say firmly. This is your mess. You need to deal with the consequences. He nods, defeated, and slowly makes his way inside to pack his things. My sister stays with my wife, the two of them talking quietly, leaning on each other for support. The rest of the night is a blur of conversations and plans. We all rally around my sister, helping her figure out what to do next, how to protect her kids from the fallout. My sister begins questioning my wife, trying to understand why her husband thought any of this could possibly work out. He must have had some reason to believe she reciprocated his feelings. My sister insists, adding that there hadn't been any issues in their marriage. Everything had been normal. My wife is crying at this point, tears streaming on her face as she tries to make sense of the situation. There's nothing you haven't seen, she says, her voice shaking. She hands my sister her phone again, and together they painstakingly go through every text message sent over the past 2 years. They read each one carefully, looking for any hint of inappropriate behavior. But there's nothing there. My wife was just being herself. She has a playful personality, always joking around and teasing. It's part of what makes her so lovable and approachable. My brother-in-law has a similar sense of humor, and they've always teased each other in a lighthearted, harmless way. She does the same with my mom and my younger brother. It's just how she interacts with people. The only incident my wife can think of that might have been misconstrued happened this past weekend. She recounts it, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. They were all together at our place, and she and my brother-in-law both reached for the fridge at the same time. They playfully jostled for who would get there first, laughing as they did so. He let her win, but then he reached around her waist to grab a beer, moving his hand slowly. She admits that, in that moment, the way he did it felt a little inappropriate. It was a fleeting feeling, and she brushed it off, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. She wonders now if her silence gave him some misguided hope. My sister listens, her expression softening. She doesn't blame my wife for any of this. She knows her well enough to understand that her playful nature isn't an invitation for anything more. It's not your fault, she reassures her, and my wife nods, though the guilt still lingers. As they finish reading through the messages, it's clear there was never any mutual attraction. No hidden signals or secret flirtations. My wife was just being herself, and my brother-in-law took that and twisted it into something it wasn't. The realization that this misunderstanding has caused so much pain is almost too much to bear. But at least for now, my sister's belief in my wife remains intact. So then my sister starts going through his MacBook to see what else she doesn't know about. She's angry and frantic at this point, her hands shaking as she types. She guesses the password, and on the third try, she's in. With a deep breath, she starts searching through his files, looking for anything that might shed more light on this nightmare. It doesn't take long before she finds something disturbing. There, buried in a folder labeled innocuously, are a lot of pictures of my wife. They date back years, and what's more unsettling is that they're always isolated shots. Just her, never in group settings or candid family moments. My sister clicks through them, her anger turning into a cold, creeping horror. One set of photos stands out. A few years ago, we went on a couple's trip to the Caribbean. It was a rare vacation without the kids, and my wife, feeling more relaxed in the adults-only environment, had worn a bikini. She usually doesn't, preferring more modest swimwear, but this time she had felt comfortable enough to do so. There were probably 50 pictures of her in that bikini, each one taken without her knowledge. My sister's face pales as she scrolls through them. It's clear he's been secretly snapping these photos for years, collecting them obsessively. The realization that he's been harboring this fixation, lurking in the shadows of family events, sends a shiver down her spine. Does this now enter restraining order territory? She wonders aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. This has taken a creepy turn, far beyond what any of us had imagined. The boundary between inappropriate and outright disturbing has been crossed. She calls us over, showing us the pictures. My wife gasps, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. She had no idea he was doing this, no inkling of his obsession. My sister, her anger now tempered by a deep sense of betrayal, starts talking about next steps. Legal action, protection for her kids, and a restraining order, all possibilities that need to be considered now. We're all reeling from this new discovery. The man we thought we knew, who we trusted as a husband, a father, and a brother-in-law, has shown a side of himself that's dark and disturbing. It's not just a matter of infatuation anymore. It's something far more insidious. Unfortunately, the mess continues. My sister agreed to talk to her husband last night and let him explain himself. She was determined to get the full story and decided to involve my wife directly to ensure there would be no lying or half-truths. They set up a FaceTime call with my wife, and I listened in off camera, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and dread. My sister, ever thorough, recorded the entire conversation for good measure. As soon as the call began, the tension was palpable. My brother-in-law looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and swollen from crying. He started hesitantly, his voice shaky, but as he spoke, the truth began to pour out, and the story unfolded in a way none of us had fully anticipated. He admitted he's been obsessed with my wife for years. It started the day I met her, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. He went on to explain that it was during one of those early gatherings where my sister, eager to introduce her new boyfriend to her friends, had brought him along. My wife and I were dating at the time, but he had met her before he met me. At first, he thought his feelings were purely physical, an innocent crush that he could brush aside. But as time went on and he spent more time around her, he realized it was more than that. He became fixated on her personality, her laughter, the way she interacted with everyone around her. He described moments where he found himself watching her, captivated by her presence, even as she was just being herself, playful and kind. He detailed how he had tried to suppress these feelings, convincing himself that they were harmless. But over time, his obsession grew. He started finding ways to be near her more often, volunteering to help with family events, making excuses to text her about trivial things. It was a slow, insidious process that eventually led to the point where he felt compelled to confess his feelings, deluding himself into believing she might feel the same way. My sister listened, her face a mask of controlled rage and heartbreak. She didn't interrupt him, letting him dig his own grave with each word. My wife, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Hearing how long this had been going on, how deeply his obsession ran, was almost too much for her to bear. When he finished, there was a heavy silence. My sister finally spoke, her voice icy and measured. "What made you think that my wife would leave me for you?" she asked, her eyes boring into his. He stammered, struggling to find the right words. He mentioned the supposed mutual attraction, the moments he had misinterpreted as signs of her reciprocation. My wife and sister exploded at that point, their pent-up anger and frustration spilling over. There was a lot of cussing, a lot of screaming, the raw emotion of betrayal and hurt coming to the forefront. My wife hung up the call, her hands trembling, her face pale. She was concerned for me, for us, assuring me repeatedly that the attraction was one-sided. I believed her. I always had. Even if she did find him physically attractive at some point, I knew she would never act on it. She's serious about trust and fidelity, something she made clear early on in our relationship. This whole ordeal was a twisted fantasy of my brother-in-law's, a dangerous delusion that had nearly torn our family apart. The tension that had been building up during the call finally erupted into a storm of cussing and screaming. My wife's voice was a mix of fury and hurt, while my sister's was steely and unforgiving. The barrage of emotions was overwhelming, the air thick with betrayal and disbelief. The phone call abruptly ended when my wife, shaking and distraught, hung up because she was concerned for me. She turned to me, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "It was one-sided," she assured me, her voice trembling. "I never thought it wasn't," I replied, trying to soothe her. Even if she did find him physically attractive at some point, I knew she would never act on it. She's just not that type of person. Early on in our relationship, there was a moment that encapsulated her stance on trust and fidelity perfectly. I remember watching her one morning as she was dressing, admiring her without saying a word. She noticed, gave me a teasing smile, and asked if I liked what I saw. But then her expression turned serious, almost cold. "Never mess up," she said, her tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Or you'll never see this again." She meant every word. My wife is serious about trust. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to mend. As I sat there, replaying the chaotic scene in my mind, I couldn't help but reflect on my brother-in-law. I knew he was a little cocky, always walking with a certain swagger, but my God, I never knew he thought so highly of himself to believe he could pull off something like this. His delusions of grandeur were staggering, completely detached from reality. I talked to my sister later on, once the initial shock had started to wear off and we could speak more calmly. She was resolute, determined to protect her children from the fallout of her husband's actions. She told me she would be contacting a lawyer first thing Monday morning to see what steps she could take to limit his exposure to their kids. She wanted to ensure that they were shielded from as much of this mess as possible. "As far as I'm concerned, he's detached from reality," she said, her voice steely with resolve. Her concern was no longer about saving her marriage but about safeguarding her children and maintaining a semblance of stability for them. Anyway, my brother-in-law returned home yesterday, not because my sister wants him back, but because she can't legally stop him. Despite the turmoil and the clear betrayal, he has the right to be in the house until the legal proceedings move forward. The atmosphere is tense and uncomfortable, filled with unspoken words and palpable resentment. They are done, and I think he realizes that now. There's a hollow look in his eyes, as if he understands that any hope he had of salvaging their marriage is gone. The lawyer tells my sister that since my brother-in-law's behavior over the past few days has been documented, there is a good chance she will be granted full custody of the kids. The texts, voicemails, and the disturbing cache of photos all paint a clear picture of his obsession and instability. He doesn't seem to even want to fight her on that. It's as if he knows he's lost everything and is too weary to put up a battle. My sister will be fine. She's stronger than she looks, and any love she had for him is gone. She moves through the house with a determined air, her focus now entirely on her children and their future. She doesn't seem to be broken up about it. Rather, she looks like someone who's finally seen the truth and is ready to move forward. The kids don't know what happened yet. They sense something is wrong. Kids always do, but they don't know the details. My brother-in-law was never around much anyway. When the kids were home, he often slept at the fire station, pulling double shifts and overtime. His absence was a constant in their lives, a silent but ever-present gap that they had grown used to. But it is certain to be hard on them once they know what's going to happen. The stability of their home, the presence of both parents, even if it was fractured, will change. My sister is prepared for this. She's already spoken to a child psychologist to help them navigate the inevitable questions and emotions that will arise. She's ready to be both mother and father, to provide them with the love and support they'll need. As for my brother-in-law, he stays in the guest room, a silent figure in a house that no longer feels like his home. He seems resigned to his fate, going through the motions but devoid of any real fight. It's a sad, pitiful sight, but my sympathy is limited. Some of my friends have said that there must be more women, that someone as obsessive as my brother-in-law couldn't have fixated on just one person. But as far as we can tell, there hasn't been anyone else. It's really just the obsession with my wife. His fixation on her has been singular and intense, leaving no room for anyone else. After everything came to light, my wife blocked his phone number, trying to create some distance and protect herself from his unwanted advances. But on the same night he returned home, he sent my wife an email from an account he had just made. It started with a seemingly sincere apology, but it quickly took a turn into something much darker. He began by saying he never got to finish at the restaurant that day, implying there was more he needed to confess. Then he launched into paragraphs and paragraphs about all the things he loves about my wife. He detailed the desperation he felt, the overwhelming emotions that had driven him to act so irrationally. He recounted every little detail he admired about her. Her smile, her laugh, the way she interacted with others. It was unsettling, to say the least, to see his obsession laid out so starkly. He mentioned their supposed mutual attraction again, insisting that there was a palpable sexual tension between them that he had always felt. He was delusional, mistaking her friendly, playful nature for something more. He painted a picture of a connection that existed only in his mind, a fantasy that he had convinced himself was real. The email ended with a rather large section about me. Let's just say I didn't know he had such a low opinion of me. He was quite certain that I was not satisfying my wife properly. He criticized everything from my appearance to my demeanor, implying that I was somehow unworthy of her. His words were meant to undermine me, to sow seeds of doubt and insecurity. Reading the email was a gut punch. It was clear that his obsession with my wife had twisted his perceptions and fueled his disdain for me. He saw me as an obstacle, someone unworthy of the woman he had placed on a pedestal. But instead of feeling threatened, it only solidified my resolve to protect my wife and my family from his delusions. We forwarded the email to my sister and her lawyer. It was more evidence of his unstable state of mind, another piece of the puzzle that showed just how far gone he was. This email, with its mix of apology, obsession, and vitriol, might be enough to get him removed from the house permanently. For now, my wife and I are taking it one day at a time. The support from our friends and family has been invaluable, helping us navigate this surreal and painful situation. Finally, my wife isn't doing great, but she is improving each day. She does feel guilty for being too comfortable around my brother-in-law. Normally, she is very careful about setting boundaries with other men. In case it wasn't clear, my wife is quite stunning and receives a lot of male attention. However, she felt safe around my brother-in-law because he was family, and she never thought he would cross any lines. Fortunately, she and my sister are on good terms, and there doesn't seem to be any resentment, which is a relief. We will all be okay, but it will take time. Thank you to everyone who commented and offered their support. My primary concern throughout this was my sister and her children. The impact of my brother-in-law's actions on their lives is immense. Ensuring their protection and emotional well-being became our priority. Children, especially, need shielding from such toxic situations to maintain their sense of security and normalcy. When faced with such a situation, it's essential to act quickly and decisively. We didn't hesitate to gather evidence, confront the issue, and involve legal help to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone involved. Procrastination or denial could have led to further harm. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.